Greetings, lore masters. Tonight, our chronicle covers the crackling, volatile, and often disappointing world of arcane arts in the northern province. We're drifting into the cold winds of the distinct snowy peaks where the air is thin and the magicka is, well, it's certainly present, even if it doesn't always pack the punch you were promised in the storybooks. We are looking at the harsh truths of wizardry, the kind that the bards usually glaze over when they sing about balls of fire raining from the heavens. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a trip to Cold Harbour without some serious enchanted gear, or at least a very rapid retreat strategy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing just how far across Nirn our little Guildhall stretches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Dragonborn stands upon the snow-dusted cobblestones of Helgen, or perhaps in the damp gloom of a cave somewhere in the Reach. The air is frigid, biting at exposed skin, and the instinct is to seek warmth. For those inclined toward the arcane, warmth comes from within, specifically from the palm of the hand. It begins with a spark. The School of Destruction is the first love of almost every aspiring mage in Tamriel. It is flashy, it is loud, and it promises the ultimate power fantasy, the ability to reshape reality through sheer force of will, turning the very air into a weapon. Every adventurer who steps off that cart, regardless of their race or background, knows the spell flames. It is the universal constant, a steady stream of burning magicka that feels like a reassuring campfire in the palm of your hand. But there is a brutally honest truth lurking within that orange glow. As the Dragonborn levels up, growing from a confused prisoner into a legendary hero, the fire often stops feeling like the breath of a dragon and starts feeling more like a slightly aggressive space heater. The reality of destruction magic in Skyrim is that mastering the elements often feels less like incinerating your foes and more like tickling them until they get annoyed enough to fall over. Consider the visual spectacle versus the physical result. You are a master wizard, clad in the robes of your order, hands glowing with the intensity of the Red Mountain. You wind up a dual-cast fireball, a projectile of condensed thermal energy capable of blasting a hole in a stone wall. You release it with a thunderous roar, striking a bandit chief squarely in the chest. An explosion rocks the cavern, ragdoll physics sends sweet rolls flying off the tables and smoke fills the room. And when the smoke clears, the bandit chief is standing there slightly singed, eyebrows missing, but his health bar has barely moved. He looks at you, unimpressed, and proceeds to decapitate you with a rusty iron warhammer. This is the great tragedy of the destruction mage. In the lore, destruction magic is terrifying. It is the school of war. Battle mages are described as walking artillery, capable of levelling fortifications and turning armies to ash. Yet, in the gameplay loop of Skyrim, there is a peculiar ceiling. A warrior can sharpen their sword on a grindstone, improving its lethality indefinitely with the right smithing skills and potions. An archer can refine their bow, but a spell is a fixed point. A firebolt cast by a novice does the same damage as a firebolt cast by the archmage, provided no perks have been taken. The magic doesn't scale with your competence, it only scales with specific hard-capped perks. This has led to the long-standing community debate regarding the viability of pure mages on higher difficulties. Fans still argue passionately in forums about whether Bethesda simply forgot to add damage scaling for spells, or if they intentionally nerfed wizards to keep the Nords from feeling inferior. The consensus usually lands on the former, that without the aid of alchemy loops or enchanted apparel, a pure mage is essentially bringing a lighter to a sword fight. Let's talk about Frost. If fire is the underwhelming heater, Frost is the cruel joke played on the Dragonborn by the province itself. The aesthetic of frost magic is undeniable. Sharp shards of ice slowing mists, the satisfying crunch of a glaciated enemy shattering. It fits the theme of the game perfectly, but here is the rub. Skyrim is full of Nords, and Nords, by virtue of their frozen heritage, possess a 50% resistance to frost magic. You're trying to freeze people who grew up bathing in ice water. It is an exercise in futility. You wander into a bandit camp, unleash a blizzard, and the locals just zip up their fur coats and charge you. It turns the entire element of frost into a niche tool, useful perhaps against the occasional giant or mud crab, but functionally useless against the primary population of the map. Then there is shock, the element of ozone and lightning. It is arguably the best of the three simply because almost nothing resists it, and the lightning bolts hit instantly, bypassing the need to lead your target. But have you ever noticed the magicka cost? Channeling lightning is exhausting. You hold down the trigger for sparks or lightning bolt, and your blue bar vanishes faster than a sweet roll in the Thieves Guild. You're left standing there, hands empty, mana drained, staring awkwardly at a Draugr Deathlord who is slowly shambling toward you. This leads to the classic Mage's Panic, where the Great Wizard suddenly remembers they are wearing a bathrobe and starts sprinting in circles, chugging blue potions like a desperate alcoholic at a tavern closing time. There is, however, a saving grace, a mechanic that keeps the Destruction Mage from being total bandit fodder. It is the Impact perk. This is the core in-game fact that separates the living wizards from the dead ones. With the Impact perk, dual casting a destruction spell staggers an opponent. It doesn't matter if you're fighting a wolf or a legendary dragon. If you hit them with a dual cast firebolt, they flinch. This changes the gameplay from a damage race into a rhythm game. You are not overpowering your enemy, you are stun locking them. You cast, they stumble. You cast again, they stumble again. It isn't the explosive, world-ending power of a Telvanni wizard. It is the power of being incredibly annoying. You're essentially poking the dragon in the eye repeatedly, so it can't take a breath to shout at you. It is effective, yes, but it lacks the grandeur one expects when wielding the primal forces of the universe. And what of the master-level spells? The reward for reaching level 100 in Destruction. You undertake a quest for Feralda, travel to the edge of the world and unlock Firestorm. It sounds incredible. A massive explosion centering on the caster. But in practice, the animation takes about 3 seconds to wind up. In Skyrim combat time, 3 seconds is an eternity. It is enough time for a farmer to shoot 3 arrows into your knee, or for a bear to maul you twice. You're stuck in a graceful, floating animation, vulnerable and exposed, praying that the spell goes off before your health reaches 0. More often than not, the Master Wizard is bludgeoned to death mid-pirouette. There is a nugget of obscure lore that highlights this disparity between reputation and reality. Consider the Mask of Azidal. Found in the Dragonborn expansion, this mask belongs to one of the most powerful enchanting mages in history. His name means the Embittered Destroyer. The lore suggests his mastery over fire was so potent he could drive men to madness just by the heat of his presence. In the game, wearing his mask gives you a 25% damage boost to fire spells. It is a nice boost, certainly, but it encapsulates the underwhelming reality perfectly. The legends speak of earth-shattering power. The reality is a slight statistical percentage increase. The Dragonborn is constantly chasing the ghost of these legends, finding that the magic of the Fourth Era is a faded, diluted echo of the past. Even the environment seems to mock the Destruction Mage. You can cast a continuous stream of fire onto a wooden table, and it will not burn. You can blast a frozen lake with a fireball, and the ice will not melt. The world is static, unyielding to your arcane might. You're not a force of nature. You're a distinct layer of visual effects floating on top of a physics engine that refuses to acknowledge your heat. There are runic traps on the floor that explode with significant force, yet if you cast a rune, enemies often just sprint over it, taking the damage but ignoring the physics. The famous wall spells, Wall of Flames, Wall of Frost, are intended to create hazardous barriers, tactical zones of denial. In reality, enemies treat them like mild inconveniences, pathfinding right through the burning ground to punch you in the face. The damage tick rate is simply too slow to act as a true deterrent. This leads to a feeling of attrition. Playing a mage in Skyrim is a war of attrition against your own magicka pool. You're constantly managing resources, balancing the cost of a spell against the health of an enemy. A warrior swings their sword for free. Power attacks cost stamina, but regular swings are infinite. An archer needs arrows, but they are plentiful. A mage needs magicka, and when it is gone, you are useless. You are a scholar holding a stick. This is why so many pure mages eventually drift towards stealth archery or spellsword builds. The sheer inefficiency of destruction magic wears you down. You get tired of needing 12 fireballs to kill a snow bear. You get tired of running backward. You start looking at that Daedric bow with envy. But we persist. We persist because there is something undeniably cool about lighting up a dark barrow with a ball of light. We persist because the sound design of a thunderbolt cracking against a shield is visceral and satisfying. We tolerate the sponginess of the enemies and the resistance of the Nords because we want to believe in the fantasy. We want to be the Dragonborn who speaks in fire. Even if deep down we know that the fire is lukewarm and the frost is ignored, we are role-playing power in a world that is mathematically designed to humble us. The journey of the mage often begins with this disappointment, this realization that the raw elements are not enough, and so the ambitious wizard looks elsewhere. They look north, to the icy coast, to a crumbling bridge and a college that claims to hold the secrets of the universe. They seek education, hoping that the scholars of Winterhold can teach them how to truly harness the storm. But as we are about to find out, the only thing more dangerous than a bandit with a warhammer is an academic institution with absolutely no safety regulations, and a curriculum that seems to consist entirely of go find this missing book. If destruction magic teaches us that fire is lukewarm, the College of Winterhold teaches us that tenure is a joke. We leave the disappointing warmth of our fire spells and trudge north, through the blizzards that numb the bone, to the only institute of higher learning left in Skyrim. The College of Winterhold stands defiant on a crumbling precipice, a majestic structure defying gravity and common sense in equal measure. It promises arcane secrets, mastery of the arts, and a community of like-minded scholars. What it actually delivers is the most terrifyingly inept administration in the history of Tamrielic education. Let's look at the enrolment process. You walk across a narrow, windswept bridge that has no guardrails. OSHA would have a field day here. And you are stopped by Feralda. To enter this prestigious university, you do not need to pass an entrance exam. You do not need a letter of recommendation. You do not need to demonstrate a history of academic rigour. You simply need to cast one spell. Often, it is a spell she sells you on the spot for 30 gold. Cast a mage light, she says. You cast it. Welcome to the college, she replies. That is the bar. The barrier to entry for the most dangerous knowledge in the world is effectively, can you turn on a flashlight? Once inside, the lack of safety standards becomes immediately apparent. Your very first lesson, conducted by the Venerable Tolfdir, involves standing in a circle while he essentially says, all right, let's just throw magic around and see what happens. He asks you to cast a ward while he flings fireballs at you. No safety goggles, no emergency healers on standby, just a group of novices gathered in a stone room filled with flammable books. This is the equivalent of a chemistry professor handing out beakers of nitroglycerin on the first day and saying, or a catch. The curriculum itself is laughably sparse. You attend exactly one class. One. After that, the entire educational model shifts from classroom learning to extreme field trips. Tolfdir decides that the best way to teach these students is to immediately march them into Sarthal, an ancient Nordic ruin filled with undead Draugr and magical traps. Please stay close, he says, moments before letting you wander off alone to trigger a trap that locks you in a room with a sinister orb. It is a miracle the entire student body isn't dead by the end of the first semester. In fact, if you look around, the student body is suspiciously small. Perhaps this field trip strategy is a form of population control. But the most brutally honest truth about the college is the career trajectory. In the corporate world, you climb the ladder. In Winterhold, you take an elevator straight to the top. The pacing of the college questline is so frantic that it breaks immersion completely. You arrive on Aturdas as a bumbling novice who barely knows how to spark a fire. By Frida's, you have uncovered a global conspiracy, defeated a Thalmor agent, spoken to the Psijic Order, and here is the kicker, been named the Archmage. Let that sink in. You become the Archmage, the headmaster, the supreme authority on magic in Skyrim, and you might still be wearing iron armour and swinging a two-handed axe. The game does not check your magic stats. You can complete the entire college questline without casting more than 3 mandatory spells. You can bludgeon your way through Sarthal, shout your way through Mzulft, and punch Ancano in the face to save the world. The faculty, seasoned wizards who have spent decades studying the arcane, look at this axe-wielding barbarian who just walked in last week and say, yes, this is our leader, this makes sense. Core in-game fact. You are given the Archmage's quarters, a beautiful room filled with alchemy ingredients, soul gems, and a garden. It represents the pinnacle of magical achievement. Yet, the actual responsibilities of the Archmage are non-existent. You don't set the curriculum, you don't manage the budget, and you certainly don't teach. You are a figurehead who occasionally stops by to loot the free ingredients. The other mages continue their routines as if nothing has changed. Tolfdir is still losing his alembic, Colette is still complaining that nobody respects restoration, and J'zargo is still trying to kill you with his experimental scrolls. Speaking of J'zargo, the students are a hazard unto themselves. J'zargo gives you Flamecloak scrolls to test on the undead. He neglects to mention that they are unstable and will explode, hurting you as much as the zombies. This is peer-reviewed research at Winterhold. Here, try this grenade I made. Then there is Brelina, who practices a spell on you that turns you green and then transforms you into a cow. This is not a controlled academic environment. It is a frat house with reality-bending superpowers. There is an obscure lore tidbit that suggests this incompetence is not just gameplay mechanics, but a deeper rot within the institution. The Augur of Dunlane, a former student who fused with the energies of the college, resides in the Midden, the dark, dank sewers beneath the school. The faculty knows he is there. Tolfdir mentions him vaguely, but they essentially leave him to rot in the basement like a dirty secret. The Augur represents the pursuit of power without restraint, a warning that the college ignores. They literally sweep their mistakes under the rug or into the sewer and carry on. The Midden itself is a house of horrors, containing a Daedric gauntlet that summons pirates and demons. Why is there an unsecured Daedric summoning circle in the basement of a school? Safety standards is clearly a phrase that has no translation in the dragon language. The fans have long debated the Great Collapse, the event that swallowed most of the city of Winterhold into the sea, leaving only the college standing. The mages claim it was a natural disaster. The locals blame the mages, given what we see of their daily operations: explosive scrolls, uncontrolled experiments, unauthorized interaction with mysterious orbs. It is not hard to side with the locals. It is entirely plausible that a student tried to dual cast a levitation spell and accidentally deleted the city's foundation code. The college's attitude is one of arrogant detachment. They sit in their tower while the town below hates them, completely oblivious to the fact that they are likely the cause of everyone's misery. The ultimate irony is the reward for all this: the Archmage's robes. They are excellent robes, reducing spell cost for all schools and boosting Magicka Regan, but they are often obtained by players who have no use for them. A heavy armor warrior who became Archmage just for the achievement throws these legendary robes into a chest and never looks at them again. The symbol of office is reduced to vendor trash. Furthermore, the college fails to utilize the immense power it sits upon. The Eye of Magnus, an artifact capable of unmaking the world, is brought into the main hall. And Kano, a Thalmor agent who is visibly evil, he practically twirls a moustache, is allowed to poke at it unsupervised. The Archmage Savozaran does nothing until it is too late. His leadership style is laissez-faire to the point of negligence. When he finally confronts Ankano, he's blown away instantly. It is a harsh lesson. In Skyrim, tenure doesn't protect you from a magical nuke. The library, run by the orc Urag Groshub, is perhaps the only functional part of the college. Urag is the only one who seems to take his job seriously, threatening to tear your arms off if you damage a book. He understands the danger of knowledge. The rest of the faculty treats magic like a toy. You have Drevis Naloran, the Master of Illusion, who is invisible half the time and ignores the fact that the college is falling apart. You have Finis Gester, the Conjuration Master, who casually mentions that students go missing in the Oblivion realms all the time. Oh yes, we lost 3 apprentices last week. Shame! Anyway, would you like to buy a spell tome? This cavalier attitude towards life and death makes Winterhold less of a school and more of a survival gauntlet. If you survive the curriculum, you aren't necessarily a good wizard, but you are definitely lucky. You leave the college not with a deep understanding of Aetherius, but with the knowledge that authority figures are generally incompetent, and that if you want something done, like saving the world from a magical anomaly, you have to do it yourself, usually while the actual masters of magic stand around watching. So, the Dragonborn departs the college, wearing the robes of an archmage, yet perhaps still feeling like an imposter. You have the title, but do you have the respect? Do you have the skills? Or did you just happen to be the only person in the room with main character energy when the previous boss died? The frosty winds of Winterhold howl around the tower, whispering the truth. The college is a crumbling monument to hubris, held together by duct tape and the sheer willpower of an orc librarian. But as you descend the icy steps, Perhaps wounded from a dragon attack or a bandit ambush, you realise you need something more than fire or titles. You need health. You need to not die. You turn your eyes to the yellow glowing school of restoration. The guards might say, "You have the hands of a healer," with a sneer. But as we are about to see, keeping yourself alive is a thankless, grinding, and surprisingly controversial job. Restoration is a perfectly valid school of magic, screams Colette Morance to anyone within earshot, and usually to the empty air when no one is listening. She's defensive, she's frantic, and frankly, she's right. But being right doesn't make the life of a restoration mage any less miserable. While the destruction mages are out there getting the glory and the burns, and the conjurers are letting their pets do the heavy lifting, the restoration mage is stuck playing the role of the frantic combat medic in a world that fundamentally wants everyone dead. Let's be brutally honest about the gameplay loop of restoration. It is reactive. You are not dictating the pace of the battle. The enemy is. A bandit swings an axe, you lose health, you cast healing. A dragon breathes fire, you lose health, you cast fast healing. You're stuck in a loop of damage control. It's like trying to bail water out of a sinking rowboat with a teacup while a giant is actively punching holes in the hull. The visual feedback is minimal. A golden glow, a soft chime sound. It lacks the visceral thud of a fireball or the satisfying shing of a sword. You are essentially erasing the enemy's progress, which is tactically sound but psychologically unrewarding. You are the janitor of the battlefield, cleaning up the mess that the physics engine leaves on your health bar. The early game for a restoration user is a masterclass in panic management. You have the default spell, Healing, which restores health at a rate that can only be described as leisurely. It consumes magicka per second. You hold down the trigger, watching your blue bar plummet while your red bar creeps up with the enthusiasm of a sloth climbing a tree. Meanwhile, a Draugr is still hitting you. The math often doesn't work out. You are healing 10 points per second, but taking 15 points of damage per second. You're simply dying slower. This isn't immortality, it's a prolonged death rattle. Then we have the ward spells. On paper, wards are fantastic. A magical shield that blocks spell damage and adds armor rating. In practice, wards are magicka black holes. The moment you cast lesser ward, your magicka bar begins to drain, as if someone pulled the plug in a bathtub. You hold it up to block a single firebolt, and by the time the enemy casts a second one, you are out of juice. You drop the ward, get hit in the face, and stagger. The cost-to-benefit ratio of wards is one of the most punishing mechanics in the game. Unless you have enchanted gear that reduces restoration cost to 0, using a ward is often more dangerous than just tanking the hit and healing afterward. It effectively renders an entire defensive mechanic useless for 90% of the game's population. However, there is one specific perk that changes everything, transforming restoration from a band-aid dispenser into a legitimate survival engine. That perk is Respite. Core in-game fact, the Respite perk allows healing spells to restore stamina as well as health. This is the game changer. Suddenly you're not just healing wounds, you're refueling your ability to run, power attack, and shield bash. For a warrior, this is infinite fuel. You can sprint across the entirety of Skyrim without stopping, simply by casting close wounds every few hundred yards. In combat, you become a perpetual motion machine. Power attack until tired, heal to recharge, power attack again. It is the only time restoration feels proactive, enabling aggression rather than just mitigating failure. But let's talk about the offensive side of restoration, or the lack thereof. For the vast majority of the game, restoration offers 0 offensive capability against the living. If a bandit attacks you, you cannot heal him to death, though that would be a hilarious mechanic. You are forced to rely on other skills to actually win the fight. Against the undead, however, you have turn undead spells. These spells cause the undead to flee in terror. Sounds useful? Think again. In a dungeon, the last thing you want is for the Draugr Deathlord to run away from you, deeper into the dungeon, where he will likely aggro 3 more friends and then come back with reinforcements. Turn undead is essentially a make the fight harder later button. It scatters enemies, making them annoying to chase down rather than solving the problem. There is, however, an obscure lore tidbit that hints at a much darker, more potent version of restoration that we never get to use. The lore speaks of restoration not just as mending flesh, but as the manipulation of life force itself, absorbing health, curing diseases by transferring them, and even fortifying attributes beyond mortal limits. In previous Elder Scrolls titles, you could fortify your strength to godlike levels. In Skyrim, restoration is sanitized. We lost the fortify skill spells. We lost the ability to damage attributes. We are left with a very safe, very clinical version of the school. The Nords distrust magic, and perhaps restoration was stripped of its more aggressive life manipulation aspects to fit the province's grim, gritty tone. You aren't a biomancer reshaping flesh. You're a field medic with a glow stick. Yet, despite Colette's whining, restoration possesses the single most powerful passive effect in the game, the Necromancy perk. This is where the community debate ignites. The Necromancy perk makes all spells more effective against undead. So what, you ask? I don't fight that many undead. Ah, but here is the trick. If you become a vampire, the game tags you as undead. Therefore, if you are a vampire with the Necromancy perk, all your spells, enchantments, and shouts that you cast on yourself become 25% stronger and last 50% longer. Your armor enchantments? Stronger. Your healing? Better. Your invisibility? Longer. It breaks the game's math. It allows for stat ceilings that shouldn't be possible. Restoration, the school mocked for being weak, is actually the key to becoming a mathematical god, but only if you embrace the curse of vampirism. It is a beautiful, ironic twist that the School of Holy Light is best utilised by a creature of the night. Let's not forget the social aspect. In a multiplayer game, the healer is valued. In Skyrim, your followers are ungrateful. You can spend your entire magicka bar keeping Lydia alive while she stands in a dragon's fire breath, and she will never thank you. She will just complain that she is sworn to carry your burdens. There is no assist XP. You don't get credit for keeping the tank alive. You only get XP based on the amount of health healed. This leads to perverse incentives where you might let your follower get beaten to within an inch of their life just so you can cast a bigger heal and get more experience. You become a sadist, watching your friends suffer so you can level up. Just a little more pain, Lydia. I need to hit level 50. And then there are the Dawnguard spells, Sunfire, Stendarr's Aura, Vampire's Bane. Finally, offensive restoration. We can blast vampires with holy light. It looks incredible. It feels righteous. But again, the brutally honest truth, the damage is mediocre. Vampire's Bane is fun, but a dual cast Incinerate from the Destruction School does significantly more damage to the same vampire. You are sacrificing efficiency for flavour. You're choosing to be a paladin for the aesthetic, knowing full well that a pyromaniac wizard would have finished the fight 10 seconds ago. The master level spell, Guardian Circle, is another mixed bag. You create a circle that heals you and turns undead. It's great if you plan on standing perfectly still in a small room. But combat in Skyrim is mobile. Enemies kite you, dragons fly away, archers backpedal. Casting a stationary healing zone is often useless because the fight has moved 20 feet to the left by the time the animation finishes. You end up standing alone in your glowing circle of safety, while the battle rages over there, looking like a child in a timeout. Restoration is a test of patience. It is the school for the stubborn. It acknowledges that pain is inevitable, and that the only way to win is to outlast. It lacks the explosive gratification of destruction, or the sneaky thrill of illusion. It is the steady, boring rhythm of survival. Heal, block, heal, swing. It turns the Dragonborn into a cockroach, unkillable, persistent and annoying to get rid of. So, Colette is right. It is a valid school of magic. But she forgets to mention that it is also the school of anxiety, magicka management, and watching your friends get beat up for XP. It is the school that keeps you in the fight just long enough to realise you should have probably brought a better sword. But perhaps you're tired of getting hit. Perhaps you're tired of healing wounds. What if you could prevent the fight from ever happening? What if you could reach into the minds of your enemies and twist their reality until they see you not as a threat, but as a friend? Or better yet, what if you could make them see their own allies as mortal enemies? We leave the golden light of restoration and step into the shimmering, terrifying shadows of illusion, where the only thing broken is the Geneva Convention. If restoration is the school of the overworked field medic, illusion is the school of the sociopath. We leave behind the golden light of healing and step into the shimmering, oily haze of mind control. On the surface, illusion seems like the gentleman's magic. It is quiet. It is subtle. It leaves no scorch marks on the furniture and no frozen corpses in the street. A mage of the college might describe it as manipulating light and sound to deceive the senses. But let's be brutally honest. Illusion is not about parlour tricks. It is about the total, non-consensual rewriting of a sentient being's reality. It is the darkest, most terrifying art in Tamriel, and the fact that it is sold freely in shops is a testament to the Empire's complete lack of ethical oversight. Consider the spell Calm. In the gameplay loop, it is a get-out-of-jail-free card. You are caught stealing a sweet roll, cast Calm. The guard sheathes his sword, smiles, and says, "Need something?" But think about the physiological horror of that interaction. You have just violated the law, the guard is flooded with adrenaline, his duty compels him to arrest you, and in a split second, you forcibly rewrite his neurochemistry. You strip away his anger, his duty, and his free will, replacing it with an artificial chemically induced docility. You are gaslighting him on a metaphysical level. He is standing there, perhaps bleeding from a wound you inflicted, smiling vacantly at his attacker because you have hijacked his brain. When the spell wears off, does he remember? Does he feel the violation? The game doesn't show us the therapy sessions these guards need afterward, but the implication is chilling. Then we have fury and frenzy. If Calm is a lobotomy, frenzy is weaponized psychosis. You cast a ball of red light into a room of bandits. Suddenly brothers turn on brothers, husbands murder wives. The bandit chief, who moments ago was sharing a meal with his crew, is now butchering them with a foaming rage he cannot comprehend. You, the Dragonborn, are not fighting them. You're hiding in a corner, eating an apple, watching them tear each other apart for your amusement. There is a popular playstyle in the community known as the pacifist run. The idea is that the player never directly kills an enemy, so their kill stat in the menu remains at 0. They use illusion to make enemies kill each other. Let's be clear. Forcing a man to murder his best friend, and then watching him stand over the corpse in confusion is not pacifism. It is a war crime with better PR. However, the brutally honest truth about playing an illusionist is that it is the most binary experience in Skyrim. It either works perfectly, making you a god, or it fails completely, making you a dead person in a bathrobe. This brings us to the dreaded mechanics of level caps. Every illusion spell has a description. Creatures and people up to level X flee from combat for 30 seconds. In the early game, this is fine, but as you level up, the world levels with you. Suddenly you walk into a dungeon, cast fear on a bandit thug, and you get the heartbreaking notification in the top left corner. Target is too powerful for this spell. There is no partial effect. The bandit doesn't get a little bit scared. He doesn't hesitate. He ignores your magic entirely and decapitates you. This forces the illusion mage into a desperate scramble for perks. You must take the dual casting perk, and you must take the perks that boost the level cap: hypnotic gaze, aspect of terror, rage. If you miss even one, your entire build falls apart against high-level Draugr. You become a one-trick pony who is terrified of leveling up too fast because if the enemies outpace your perk tree, you are functionally defenseless. This binary nature leads to the muffle invisibility loop, the crutch of every stealth archer and dagger assassin. Muffle makes your footsteps silent. Invisibility makes you transparent. Combine the two, and the game's AI simply shuts down. You can crouch right in front of a Falmer, and he will look through you. You can sprint through a bandit camp, and they will complain about the wind while you pickpocket the clothes off their bodies. It trivializes the game to a comical degree. The tension of stealth, timing your movements, watching patrol patterns, evaporates. You're not sneaking, you're simply opting out of the game's detection mechanics. It feels less like being a master spy, and more like toggling a developer console command. But the true peak of illusion, and the source of its greatest absurdity, is the level 100 master spells: Harmony, Hysteria, and Mayhem. These spells have a massive area of effect and penetrate walls. You can stand in the middle of Whiterun, cast Harmony, and the entire city stops what they are doing to bask in a green glow. It is cult leader levels of influence. Conversely, you can cast Mayhem in a dungeon entrance, and the red wave of energy will filter down through the floors, causing every goblin, spider, and bandit in the complex to start fighting immediately. You can clear an entire dungeon without unsheathing a weapon, or even seeing an enemy. You just wait for the red dots on your compass to disappear. It is efficient, yes, but it leaves you feeling like a ghost, haunting the world rather than living in it. Let's touch on a core in-game fact that fundamentally changes the rules: the Master of the Mind perk. Normally, illusion spells do not work on undead, Daedra, or automatons. You can't scare a zombie, it has no brain. You can't enrage a Dwemer Centurion, it is a steam-powered robot. But with this level 90 perk, suddenly you can. The game explains this as your magic becoming so potent it bypasses biology. But consider the implications. You're projecting fear into a machine. You're forcing a reanimated corpse which has no soul to feel calm. You're manipulating the psychology of a steam engine. It breaks the law of the universe in half for the sake of gameplay balance. A robot running away in terror because you waved your hands at it is one of those video game logic moments that you just have to accept, even if it makes absolutely no sense. There is a fascinating obscure lore tidbit found in the book Incident at Necrom. The story follows an illusionist who casts a spell so powerful that the illusion becomes reality. The monsters she creates are not just phantoms, they deal real damage and have real mass. This touches on the deeper metaphysics of the Elder Scrolls universe. If you can trick the universe into thinking something is there, the universe eventually just agrees with you. This suggests that the illusion school is actually a weak form of reality warping. When you use invisibility, you aren't just bending light, you're convincing the world that you aren't there. It frames the Dragonborn not as a trickster, but as a minor deity imposing their will on the fabric of existence. It's a terrifying amount of power for someone who primarily uses it to steal cheese wheels. And yet, despite this power, illusion feels oddly lonely. The Call to Arms spell is meant to buff your allies, increasing their combat skills and health. It's the Bard archetype spell. But because follower AI is so erratic, you often buff your companion, only for them to get stuck behind a door or fall into a trap. You're a commander with no army, a puppet master whose puppets are constantly walking into walls. The community debate around illusion often centres on the silent casting perk. This perk makes all spells, from any school, silent to enemies. It is arguably the most broken perk in the game. It allows you to cast loud, explosive fireballs from stealth without revealing your position. It turns the illusion tree into a mandatory dip for almost every other build. Want to be a stealthy summoner? You need illusion. Want to be a sniper mage? You need illusion. It ceases to be its own school and becomes a utility belt for everyone else. The dedicated illusionist is rare because the tools are often better used to support other, more direct forms of violence. Ultimately, illusion is the school of detachment. You don't get your hands dirty. You don't feel the impact of the sword or the heat of the fire. You stand back wrapped in shadow watching the world dance to your tune. It is a god complex in spell form. You strip your enemies of their dignity, their agency, and their sanity. You turn the brave warrior into a coward and the loving husband into a murderer. And when the dust settles and the bodies are piled high, you simply cast invisibility and walk away, leaving the survivors to wonder what madness just descended upon them. It is a clean, bloodless, and utterly horrific way to wage war. But perhaps manipulating the mind is too subtle for you. Perhaps you prefer the physical world. Perhaps you want to reshape matter itself to turn skin into oak and iron into gold. We leave the shadows of the mind and step into the rigid, weirdly scientific world of Alteration, where we find that the power to change the world is mostly used to make sure we don't get hurt when we fall off a mountain. We step out of the shadows of the mind and into the tangible physical reality of Alteration. This is the school of the scientist, the physicist, the mage who looks at a rock and says, "I reject your reality and substitute my own." In the lore, Alteration is about manipulating the physical laws of the universe. It is the ability to breathe water, to walk on air, to turn lead into gold. It sounds limitless. It sounds like the toolset of a god. But the brutally honest truth about Alteration in Skyrim is that for 90% of your playthrough, it is just a fancy way of putting on invisible pants. Let's talk about the flesh spells. Oak flesh, stone flesh, iron flesh, ebony flesh. These are the bread and butter of the Alteration mage. You cast a spell, your skin glows green or blue for a second, and suddenly you have an armor rating. It is mechanically identical to wearing armor, but with two major downsides. It expires after 60 seconds, and it costs magicka. A warrior puts on a steel breastplate once and is protected forever. A mage has to reapply their armour every minute like they are putting on sunscreen at the beach. If you forget, you die. If you run out of magicka, you die. It is a maintenance tax on your survival. This leads to the comical sight of the pre-battle shuffle. You see a bandit. Do you attack? No. First, you must cast Stoneflesh. Then you wait for magicka to regen. Then you open the door. The duration is so short, usually 60 seconds without perks, that by the time you have finished looting the first room of a dungeon, your magical protection has evaporated. You spend half the dungeon glowing and the other half panicking because you heard a sound and realised you're technically naked. The Mage Armour perk attempts to fix this. It triples the effectiveness of flesh spells if you're wearing no physical armour. This forces you into the robes-only lifestyle. Core in-game fact: to reach the armour cap, roughly 567 armour rating with just spells, you need the highest tier spell, Dragonhide, or Potent Potions. Standard ebony flesh with max perks only gets you to 300 armour. That's equivalent to a decent set of leather armour. So after mastering the arcane arts and reshaping your own biology, you are roughly as durable as a bandit wearing boiled cow skin. It is underwhelming, to say the least. Then we have the utility spells, which range from mildly convenient to why does this exist? Water breathing is useful exactly 3 times in the entire game, usually to find a chest at the bottom of a sunken ship that contains 12 gold and a minor stamina potion. Candlelight is just a floating ball of light that ruins your stealth and makes everything look washed out. And Detect Life? It's fantastic for seeing enemies through walls, provided you have enough magicka to hold it for more than 4 seconds. It turns you into a magical submarine radar, pinging the dungeon for threats, but since you can't attack while channeling it, you just end up knowing exactly where you're going to die. But the elephant in the room, or rather, the levitating cabbage in the room, is telekinesis. In theory, telekinesis is the power of the Jedi. You can grab objects from afar and hurl them at your foes. In practice, telekinesis in Skyrim does almost 0 damage. You can pick up a sword with your mind and throw it at a wolf, and the wolf will look at you with mild confusion as the sword bounces off its nose. The damage calculation is laughable. You're not a deadly psychic warrior. You're a lazy person who doesn't want to walk across the room to get a potion. Its primary use in the community is actually an exploit. Fast travelling while holding an object with telekinesis and 100% magicka cost reduction instantly levels Alteration to 100. The spell is so useless for combat that its only meta function is to break the levelling system. However, Alteration is a school of wait for it. The early game is miserable, but then you hit the tipping point. You unlock Paralyze. This is the moment Alteration goes from useless utility to absolute domination. Paralyze is one of the most powerful crowd control effects in the game. You point at an enemy, and they stiffen up and fall over like a plank of wood. Gravity takes over, and physics hilarity ensues. If you paralyze an enemy on a slope, they slide all the way to the bottom. If you paralyze a giant, he topples like a felled tree. The tactical advantage is absurd. A paralyzed enemy cannot block, cannot dodge, and cannot attack. They are helpless. You can paralyze a bandit chief, casually walk up to him, apply poisons, heal yourself, rearrange your inventory, and then start hitting him while he lies there contemplating his life choices. It is the ultimate no you button. The only downside is the cost, but by the time you have Paralyze, you likely have the gear to support it. Then comes the master spell, Dragonhide. Unlike the other flesh spells, Dragonhide doesn't give you armor points, it gives you 80% physical damage reduction. This is the hard cap for damage mitigation. For 30 seconds you're effectively a tank, but true to the master spell curse we discussed in Destruction, the casting animation is a long two-handed ritual. You have to stand still and wave your arms while enemies are actively trying to kill you. Trying to cast Dragonhide in the middle of a fight usually results in you taking more damage during the cast time than the spell prevents in its duration. It is a spell you have to cast before the fight, which requires precognition or save scumming. There is also the Transmute spell, an obscure lore tidbit that is actually a game mechanic hidden in a bandit camp early in the game, Halted Stream Camp. Transmute turns iron ore into silver ore and silver ore into gold ore. This single spell breaks the entire economy of Skyrim. You buy iron ore for pennies, turn it into gold, smelt it into rings, enchant the rings, and sell them for a massive profit. It is the infinite money glitch of the arcane world. From a lore perspective, this spell should be the most guarded secret in the Empire. It devalues currency. It should cause hyperinflation. Yet, it sits on a table in a dusty mine, ignored by the bandits who are literally mining iron right next to it. They are slaving away for iron wages when they have the Philosopher's Stone on their nightstand. It is a testament to the lack of education in Skyrim's criminal underworld. The Atronach perk is another point of contention. It absorbs 30% of incoming spells as magicka. Combine this with the Atronach Stone, and you can reach 80-100% spell absorption. You become immune to magic. Dragon Breath refuels your tank. Fireballs, delicious mana. But there is a bug, or perhaps a feature, where this absorption affects your own conjuration spells. You try to summon a Dremora Lord, and your body absorbs the spell, cancelling the summon and giving you magicka back. You essentially eat your own minions before they can exist. It forces a specific playstyle where Alteration mages cannot be conjurers, creating a strange anti-synergy between the schools. Fans debate the usefulness of Detect Dead. It sounds great for necromancers or vampire hunters. But in a game where 90% of dungeons are Draugr crypts, Detect Dead is just a light up the whole screen button. Everything is dead. The walls are lined with dead things, the floor is dead things. It provides too much information, becoming visual noise rather than tactical data. And finally, we have Ash Shell and Ash Rune from the Dragonborn DLC. These encase enemies in hardened ash, taking them out of the fight but making them invulnerable to damage. It is a pause button. It's useful if you are overwhelmed, but annoying if you want to kill things quickly. You ash the boss, kill the minions, and then wait. You stand around the ash pile, weapon drawn, awkwardly waiting for the spell to wear off so you can resume the violence. It ruins the pacing of combat. Ultimately, Alteration is a school of extremes. It is the most boring school to level, spamming muffle or detect life in a corner, and its defensive spells are tedious chores. But the reward, the ability to paralyze foes and ignore physics, is potent. It transforms the Dragonborn from a squishy wizard into a controller of the battlefield. It lacks the flash of fire or the cruelty of illusion, but there is a quiet satisfaction in turning an attacking bear into a statue and then walking past it. But maybe you don't want to stop enemies. Maybe you want to use them. Maybe you think that death is just a career change. We leave the clean, scientific world of Alteration and descend into the crypts, into the smell of rot and formaldehyde. It's time to talk about necromancy, conjuration, and the incredibly awkward social stigma of bringing your friends back to life to carry your loot. We leave the sterile, scientific laboratories of the Alteration mage and descend into the damp, smelling salts-required atmosphere of the crypt. We are talking about Conjuration, specifically the branch that deals with the recycling of mortal remains, necromancy. In the lore of Tamriel, necromancy is the black art, forbidden by the Mages Guild, rest in peace, reviled by the common folk, and practiced only by power-hungry lunatics like Mannimarco. In Skyrim, however, necromancy is less abomination against nature, and more socially awkward hobby that leaves a mess on the carpet. The brutally honest truth about necromancy is that it is the most administratively exhausting way to play the game. Unlike summoning a Dremora Lord, who arrives fully armoured, shouts an insult, kills your enemy and vanishes cleanly, raising the dead requires raw materials. You cannot start a fight with a zombie, you have to find a corpse first. This turns every combat encounter into a scavenger hunt. Excuse me, Mr. Bandit, would you mind dying quickly so I can use your body to kill your friend? It is a reactive playstyle that relies on the presence of the recently deceased. If you are fighting a dragon in an open field with no other wildlife around, the necromancer is just a guy in a robe waving his hands at a lizard. Then there is the aesthetic issue. Reanimated minions in Skyrim are not the silent, terrifying soldiers of the Scourge. They are noisy, stumbling nuisances. They moan constantly. "Ugh!" echoes through your speakers every 3 seconds. It is the audio equivalent of a dripping tap. Walking through a quiet, majestic forest with a reanimated bandit is impossible. The ambience is ruined by the groaning of your pet corpse. It makes you feel less like a dark lord of death and more like a babysitter for a very sick, very vocal drunk. And let's discuss the ash pile mechanic. When your standard reanimation spell wears off, or when the zombie is killed, it disintegrates into a pile of glowing blue ash. This is a core in-game fact that drives players with obsessive-compulsive disorder absolutely mad. These ash piles do not despawn quickly, they linger. If you spend a lot of time in Whiterun practicing your spells on the local guards or chickens, the city streets eventually look like the aftermath of a volcanic eruption. You are literally littering the province with the dust of your enemies. It is untidy, it is disrespectful, and it is a permanent graphical reminder of your dark deeds. But the true peak of necromancy, and the source of its greatest hilarity, is the master-level spell, Dead Thrall. This spell removes the time limit. The zombie is permanent. It follows you until it is killed. This sounds amazing. You can technically resurrect a powerful boss like Auchendor or a master vampire, and have them as a permanent companion. But the game's AI is not designed for permanent zombies. They get stuck on doors. They get lost in fast travel. They have a terrible habit of engaging enemies you're trying to sneak past. Worse, the NPCs of Skyrim have absolutely no chill about your thrall. Walk into a tavern with a reanimated corpse, and everyone loses their minds. "That spell looks dangerous, keep your distance," shouts the guard. "Get that thing away from me," cries the barmaid. You become a social pariah. You're the person who brings a rabid dog to a dinner party. It creates a disconnect where you are the saviour of the world, the Dragonborn. But nobody wants to sit next to you because your friend smells like rot and is missing an arm. There is a dark practicality to Dead Thrall that the community has optimised to a disturbing degree. Since a corpse has an inventory and a thrall follows you, players realise that a dead thrall is essentially a walking backpack with infinite carry weight. You can load 500 pounds of dragon bones onto your zombie, resurrect him, and fast travel to a shop. The pack mule zombie is a staple of the high-level hoarder. It is the ultimate indignity. Not only have you enslaved this bandit's soul, but you're also using his body to haul your vendor trash. Rise, servant of death, and carry these 40 iron daggers. However, the awkward social stigma extends to the mechanics of the spells themselves. Most reanimation spells have a level cap. Raise zombie works on weaklings. Reanimate corpse works on average foes. If you try to raise a high-level Draugr Deathlord with a low-level spell, you get the dreaded message, "Target is too powerful." The necromancer is constantly judging bodies not by their utility, but by their level. You find yourself inspecting corpses like a butcher inspecting cuts of meat. Too strong, too strong. Ah, a level 6 bandit, perfect. Arise. It feels petty. You are the commander of the weak, the lord of the mediocre. This leads us to the Ritual Stone, an obscure lore tidbit that is actually a mechanical loophole. The Ritual Stone power allows you to raise all dead bodies around you once per day. The key is that this power ignores the summon limit, usually 1 or 2, and the level cap. You can raise an entire army of giants, mammoths, and bandits simultaneously. For 60 seconds, you are a god. But then they all die at once, and you are left standing in a circle of ash piles waiting 24 game hours to do it again. It is the one-hit wonder of necromancy. It's flashy, it crashes the frame rate, and it's mostly used for YouTube montages rather than practical adventuring. Then there is the moral implication, which the game glosses over until the Dawnguard DLC. Fans have debated for years. Is necromancy evil in Elder Scrolls? The Mages Guild banned it, but the College of Winterhold allows it. It's just a tool, says Finis Gester. But then you visit the Soul Cairn, you see the ideal masters, you realise that when you soul trap someone, or perhaps even when you mess with their remains, you are trafficking with entities that deal in eternal suffering. The Dawnguard expansion confirms that souls trapped in gems go to the Soul Cairn, a bleak purgatory. Every time you fill a soul gem to recharge your firestaff, you are sending a bandit to hell. Every time you raise a thrall, you are delaying their rest. The Dragonborn is not just a hero, they are a metaphysical human trafficker. The game doesn't punish you for this, no karma meter, but the lore implications are horrifying. Compare this to the clean side of Conjuration. Atronachs. You summon a flame Atronach. She floats, she shoots fire, she looks cool. When she dies, she explodes and vanishes. No ash pile, usually. No corpse, no smell. She is a magical construct from oblivion. It is guilt-free warfare. The Atronach versus zombie debate is the central divide in the Conjuration community. Team Atronach values hygiene and reliability. Team Zombie values the chaotic potential of raising a bandit chief who still has his enchanted warhammer. But the Atronachs have their own brutally honest truth. They are stupid. The Storm Atronach is a tank, but he is a floating pile of rocks who loves to block doorways. The Flame Atronach is a ranged unit who loves to float into melee range. The Dremora Lord is the only competent one, mostly because his solution to everything is extreme violence. "I smell weakness!" he screams, charging a mud crab. It's effective, but it lacks subtlety. And let's not forget the Twin Souls perk. This level 100 perk allows you to have 2 summons. This is the goal: 2 Dremora Lords, 2 dead thralls. It effectively doubles your power, but getting Conjuration to 100 is a grind. The most common method: cast Soul Trap repeatedly on a dead horse. Yes, the path to becoming a Master of Death involves standing in a field for an hour, shouting magical words at a horse carcass. It is the least heroic training montage imaginable. "What did you do today, Dragonborn?" I yelled at a dead pony until I understood the secrets of the universe. There is also a weird interaction with the townsfolk regarding dangerous spells. If you walk around with a spell drawn, guards get nervous. But if you walk around with a literal demon from the pits of oblivion, a Dremora, they just say, "That's a nice spell you have there." The cognitive dissonance of the AI is staggering. They are more afraid of your glowing hands than the 6-foot-tall Daedra wielding a greatsword standing next to you. Ultimately, Necromancy in Skyrim is a labour of love. You have to love the aesthetic, you have to tolerate the moaning, you have to accept the ash piles. It is not the most efficient way to play. An archer kills things faster, a destruction mage kills things cleaner, but it offers a unique form of companionship. It is for the player who never wants to be alone, even if their company is a rotting corpse named Bandit Outlaw. But perhaps you are tired of relying on minions. Perhaps you want the power to be in your hands, or more specifically, in your gear. You want to bend the laws of magic to make your sword hit harder and your armor stronger. You want to engage in the industrial revolution of Skyrim. We leave the graveyard and step up to the arcane workbench. It is time to discuss enchanting, and the game-breaking loop that turns the Dragonborn from a hero into a math equation. We leave the rotting flesh and the awkward social encounters of the necromancer behind, and step into the warm, glowing light of the arcane enchanter. This is the skull-adorned table where the game's balance goes to die. If destruction is the flashy promise, and alteration is the scientific method, enchanting is the industrial revolution. It is the art of taking the magic of the universe, stuffing it into a pair of boots, and using it to kick the laws of physics in the teeth. The brutally honest truth about enchanting is that it is the single most powerful skill tree in Skyrim, to the point where it actively ruins the experience of finding loot. In any other RPG, delving into a deep, dangerous dungeon promises a reward, a legendary sword, a cursed helmet, something unique. In Skyrim, once you have mastered enchanting, every chest contains trash. You open a master-locked chest at the end of a Dwemer ruin, pull out a glass sword of burning, look at its stats and laugh. 15 points of fire damage? That's cute. You throw it on the ground because the iron dagger you made in your basement deals 300 points of chaos damage and paralyzes the target for a decade. Enchanting turns the Dragonborn from an adventurer into a snob who turns their nose up at artifacts forged by gods. The journey to this level of power, however, is a soul-crushing grind that resembles assembly line work more than wizardry. We have all done it. We have all spent hours in Whiterun, buying every iron ingot and leather strip from Adrian Avenici, crafting hundreds of iron daggers, and then waddling over to the enchanting table to apply the Banish Daedra enchantment to every single one. Why Banish Daedra? Because it has the highest gold value calculation, ensuring you bankrupt every merchant in the hold when you try to sell them. The Dragonborn becomes a flooding mechanism for the local economy, dumping magical shanks into the market until inflation hits the Cloud District. You aren't saving the world, you are mass-producing cheap magical cutlery. But once you reach level 100, the game fundamentally changes. You unlock the Extra Effect perk. This is the core in-game fact that separates the mortals from the deities. It allows you to place 2 enchantments on a single item. This sounds simple, but the synergy is multiplicative. You can enchant a helmet with Fortify Archery and Fortify Water Breathing. Actually, scratch that. Nobody uses water breathing. You enchant it with Fortify Archery and Fortify Magicka. Then you do the same to your gauntlets, your ring, and your necklace. Suddenly your bow deals double damage. The most broken application of this, however, involves the Fortify School enchantments. If you enchant 4 pieces of gear, head, chest, ring, necklace, with Fortified Destruction 25%, the cost of your destruction spells drops by 100%. The math is additive. You now have 0 magicka cost. You can cast Incinerate, a spell that normally burns through your mana bar in seconds, infinitely. You become a machine gun of fireballs. The entire resource management mechanic of the game, the blue bar, ceases to exist. You are playing a shooter with infinite ammo and no reload time. It feels incredible for about 20 minutes, and then you realise you have removed all tension from combat. This leads to the sad reality of Daedric artifacts. In the lore, these are items of terrifying power, gifts from the Princes of Oblivion. Dawnbreaker, the Sword of Meridia, the Mace of Molag Bal, the Weapon of Domination. Players spend hours completing quests to obtain them, and then they mount them on a weapon rack in Breezehome and never touch them again. Why? Because a player-enchanted Dragonbone sword is mathematically superior in every way. Why use the Mace of Molag Bal, which traps souls and damages stamina, when you can craft a mace that traps souls, damages stamina, absorbs health, and sets the enemy on fire, all with higher base damage? The crafting system renders the unique rewards of the game obsolete. It is a strange design choice where the player's hobbycraft is more potent than ancient, divine weaponry. Let's discuss the ethical nightmare of the fuel source, soul gems. To enchant, you need souls. White souls for animals, black souls for people. This implies that the Dragonborn is running around trapping the consciousness of sentient beings into crystals and then using their eternal essence to make their sneakers quieter. The quest for the Black Star highlights this perfectly. It is a Daedric artifact that acts as a reusable soul gem. You have a choice. Give it to Aranir and keep it as Azura's star, traps only white souls, or give it to Nelacar and corrupt it into the Black Star, traps all souls including humans. The community debate on this is non-existent. Almost everyone chooses the Black Star. Why? Because human souls, bandits, guards, Nazim, are always grand level souls, providing the maximum charge. It is simply too convenient. This means the canonical Dragonborn is a serial soul trapper who condemns human souls to the ideal masters in the soul cairn just to recharge their sword. We gloss over this horror because we like the plus and 40% one-handed damage, but from a role-playing perspective, the Enchanter is the greatest villain in Skyrim. You are powering your wardrobe with the screaming souls of your enemies. There is an obscure lore tidbit regarding the Azidal set from the Dragonborn DLC that acknowledges this obsession with enchanting. Azidal was a legendary enchanter whose obsession drove him to madness, and eventually to the service of Hermaeus Mora. If you wear his 4 relic pieces, you get a plus 10 to enchanting skill. It is a nod from the developers to the min-maxers. They know we will wear this ugly, heavy armor set just for the few seconds we're at the table, squeezing every last percentage point out of the system. We are Azidal. We are consumed by the desire for better numbers. And then, we must address the restoration loop. This is the elephant in the room, the glitch that became a feature. By stacking Fortify Alchemy gear to make Fortify Restoration potions, which, due to a bug, buff the enchantments on your gear, you can create an exponential feedback loop. You can craft a potion of Fortify Enchanting that boosts your skill by 14,000%. You drink it, then enchant a fork with 5,000 fire damage. Is it cheating? Bethesda has re-released Skyrim multiple times and never patched it out. The community generally accepts it as chim, the in-law concept of realizing you're in a dream, a game, and manipulating the reality. You have literally broken the math of the universe. But even without the glitches, standard enchanting creates a god problem. When you have 80% magic resistance and 80% physical damage reduction, and a sword that absorbs 50 health per hit, you stop playing Skyrim. You start playing Walking Simulator. Dragons land and you kill them in 2 hits. Bandit chiefs power attack you and your health bar doesn't move. The music swells, promising an epic battle, but the mechanics deliver a slaughter. You have engineered the fun out of the game. The visual aspect of enchanting also leaves something to be desired. Enchanted weapons glow. It's a cool effect at first. But when you are trying to be a stealthy assassin lurking in the shadows, Having a dagger that glows with the brightness of a magnesium flare is somewhat counterproductive. "I wonder where the assassin is," asks the guard. "Maybe it's the guy holding the neon green glow stick in the dark corner," replies his friend. The enchantment shimmer effect on armor also tends to make everything look like it's wrapped in oily plastic. You lose the texture of the steel or the fur, replaced by a generic purple sheen. You look less like a warrior and more like a disco ball. There is also the recharging tedium. Despite your godlike power, your weapons run out of charge. You have to constantly pause the game, go into the menu, select the weapon, press T, select a soul gem and recharge. It breaks the flow of combat. You are the legendary Dragonborn mid-swing, pausing time to change the batteries in your sword. "Hold on, Alduin. My World Eater 5000 is blinking red. Just give me a second." The interaction with followers is another missed opportunity. You can give them your overpowered enchanted gear, and they will use it, but they don't understand it. Give Lydia a staff of fireballs, and she will use it on a rat in your kitchen. Give her armor with fortified destruction, and it does nothing because she doesn't use spells efficiently. You are the only one who can truly wield this power, isolating you further. Enchanting also creates a hoarding problem. You keep every piece of apparel with a unique enchantment solely to disenchant it later. Your chest in Breezehome is filled with Ring of Minor Squire and Robes of the Novice. You destroy them to learn the secret, consuming the item permanently. It feels like reverse engineering alien technology. You break the toaster to learn how to make toast. By the end, you know every enchantment in the world, but you have destroyed a museum's worth of artifacts to get there. Ultimately, enchanting is the endpoint of the Skyrim progression. It is the moment you stop fearing the world, and the world starts fearing you. It is the brutally honest truth that the greatest magic in Tamriel isn't found in ancient scrolls or taught by wise masters. It is hammered out on a table by a guy who has been awake for 3 days drinking potions and mumbling about percentages. You become the master of your own fate, but in doing so, you realise that a game without challenge is just a spreadsheet with dragons. But perhaps you're tired of crafting. Perhaps you're tired of menus and numbers. You want something raw. You want something primal. You want to open your mouth and scream at the universe until it obeys. We leave the enchanting table and climb the 7,000 steps to High Hrothgar. It is time to discuss the thuum, the voice, and why being a Dragonborn is mostly about shouting goats off of cliffs. We leave the enchanting table, still glowing with the residue of 1,000 soul gems, and ascend the 7,000 steps to the throat of the world. We are here to discuss the thuum, the voice, the signature ability that separates the Dragonborn from a mere hedge wizard. The marketing for Skyrim sold as a fantasy, a warrior roaring at the heavens, skies darkening, and enemies crumbling before the sheer sonic force of their vocal cords. But the brutally honest truth is that for the vast majority of the game, the thuum is less about shattering mountains and more about annoying the local wildlife. Let's start with the cooldown mechanic. In the lore, the ancient tongues could shout continuously. They besieged cities with their voices, they blew down gates, they were walking natural disasters. You, the Dragonborn, the only mortal with the soul of a dragon, shout Fusrodar once and then you get a headache. You have to wait 45 seconds before you can speak up again. This turns the ultimate power into a tactical gadget that you use once per encounter. You shout a bandit off a bridge, and then you spend the rest of the fight swinging a sword like a normal person, watching the blue compass bar slowly recharge. You aren't a dragon. You're a cannon with a very long reload time. The most iconic shout, Unrelenting Force, is the perfect example of flashover substance. It is the meme of the decade. We all know the words, but in terms of damage, it's pathetic. A full 3-word shout deals a microscopic amount of health damage. Its primary function is physics manipulation. It is a leaf blower for ragdoll models. You don't use it to kill enemies, you use it to launch them. It is undeniably hilarious to shout a heavily armoured orc off the side of a mountain and watch him bounce down the cliffside for a solid minute. But in a confined dungeon hallway, it just scatters the loot. You shout, the bodies fly everywhere, and now you have to spend 10 minutes looking for where the boss's sword landed. It's the messy room shout. Then we have fire breath and frost breath. You would think breathing fire like a dragon would be the pinnacle of combat, but compare the damage of a full fire breath shout to a dual cast incinerate spell. The spell wins, hands down. The shout has a massive cooldown, the spell can be spammed. The Dragonborn's breath is surprisingly mild. It's spicy, sure, but it's not the napalm torrent we see the actual dragons use. You find yourself shouting at a snow bear, and the bear just shakes its head, looks at you with pity, and proceeds to maul you. This leads to the utility shout meta. Since the offensive shouts are underwhelming, players gravitate towards shouts that break the game's travel mechanics. Whirlwind Sprint is not used for tactical positioning in combat. It is used because you are over-encumbered and trying to get to the merchant faster, or to jump across a gap you aren't supposed to cross to. Skip a puzzle, it's the speedrunner's cough. Even more prominent is Become Ethereal. This shout makes you invulnerable but unable to attack. Its primary use: jumping off high mountains without dying. That's it. It isn't a combat tool, it's a parachute. The Dragonborn, master of the arcane voice, uses his divine gift essentially as an elevator to get down from High Hrothgar faster. Core in-game fact. To unlock these shouts, you need dragon souls. This turns the Dragonborn into a soul eater. You kill a dragon, absorb its soul, and spend it to learn a word. This creates a hoarding mentality. You have 50 dragon souls banked, but you refuse to unlock Kind's Peace because, let's be honest, who cares about calming down a mud crab? You become a gatekeeper of ancient knowledge, leaving half your vocabulary locked away because the shouts are simply not worth the currency. Sorry, Animal Allegiance, you aren't worth the soul of a blood dragon. I'm saving this for slow time. Speaking of Kind's Peace and Animal Allegiance, the shout list is filled with filler. There are shouts that are functionally useless. Disarm sounds great, but high-level enemies, the ones you actually want to disarm, are immune to it. Call of Valor summons a hero from Sovngarde, which is cool, but he usually shows up wearing outdated armor and dies to a legendary dragon in 2 hits. And Clear Skies. Its only purpose is to stop the rain so you can take a nice screenshot, or to clear the mist on the way to Parthenax. You have the power to control the weather, and you use it to get better lighting for your Instagram post. But there is one shout that breaks the game in a way the developers likely didn't intend. Marked for death. This is the sleeper hit. It drains health and armor rating per second. The kicker: the armor rating drain is permanent for the duration of the fight and can stack. If you hit a dragon with this, their armor rating goes into the negatives. You can punch a legendary dragon to death with your bare hands if you wait long enough. It turns the toughest enemies into paper. It lacks the boom of unrelenting force, but it is the silent killer, the math breaker. The social interactions regarding the voice are also bizarre. You are the Dragonborn. You have just saved Whiterun. You shout in the street to celebrate. A guard walks up to you and says, "I need to ask you to stop. That shouting is making people nervous. You're a demigod. You eat dragon souls for breakfast, and you are getting a noise complaint from a guy whose knees are buckling under the weight of his own iron armor. It completely deflates the power fantasy. You're treated like a teenager playing loud music, not a divine avatar." There is a fascinating obscure lore tidbit involving the philosophy of the Greybeards versus the Blades. The Greybeards follow the way of the voice, which preaches pacifism and worship of the gods through silence. The Blades want you to weaponize it, to kill dragons. Fans debate this endlessly. Is the Dragonborn betraying the way by shouting at everything that moves? The lore suggests that using the voice for violence weakens it, or corrupts the user, like the Dragon Priest Mirak. But the game has no such mechanic. You can shout at bunnies, cheese wheels, and Nazim with zero spiritual repercussions. The deep philosophical struggle is reduced to, do I listen to the boring old men or the paranoid spy lady? And we must mention the training montage. Learning a shout from the Greybeards involves staring at the floor. They shout a word onto the stone tiles. It glows. You look at it. You absorb it. It is the most passive form of education imaginable. Look at the shiny letters, Dragonborn. Then they shout at you to test your balance. It feels less like training for war, and more like a hazing ritual at a wizard fraternity. Okay, pledge, stand there while we yell at you. Then there is Dragonrend. This is the plot essential shout. It forces a dragon to land. It imposes the concept of mortality onto an immortal being, causing it such existential dread that it forgets how to fly. It is a metaphysical weapon. In gameplay, it is the "Stop Flying You Coward" button. Dragons in Skyrim love to circle overhead, strafing you, refusing to land. Dragonrend is the fly swatter. It is satisfying not because it feels powerful, but because it ends the frustration of melee characters running around looking at the sky. It is a shout born of annoyance. The DLCs added some flair. Solitaire from the Dawnguard DLC is brutal. It rips the soul out of an enemy and reanimates them as a zombie. It is basically an instant kill necromancy shout, and Dragon Aspect from the Dragonborn DLC gives you a spectral armor visualization that looks undeniably cool. For once, you actually look like a dragon. Your power attacks get stronger, your shout cooldowns drop. For a few minutes once a day, you feel like the legend, and then it wears off, and you are just a guy in leather armor again. Let's not forget the throw voice shout. You learn this at a wall guarded by Croesus. It is intended for stealth. You shout at a wall and enemies go to investigate the sound. But the best part is the audio. The Dragonborn literally insults the enemies. "Hey, skeever butt," or "Hey, melon nose." It is the only time the Dragonborn has a personality, and that personality is a rude 12-year-old. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated comedy in a grim setting. You are trolling the Falmer. Ultimately, the thuum is a mixed bag. It gives us the power to stagger giants and clear cloudy skies. It gives us a connection to the divine, but mostly, it gives us a reason to hoard souls and a button to press when we are tired of enemies blocking the doorway. It is very loud magic indeed, distinct from the Magicka bar but bound by the same arbitrary video game logic of timers and cooldowns. You're a dragon in spirit, but a stopwatch in practice. But even the greybeards and their shouting can't solve every problem. Sometimes you need wisdom. Sometimes you need the secrets of the ancient archmages. You hear of a labyrinth built by the great Shalidor, a test of wit and magic that promises immense reward. You leave the mountain and head to the labyrinthian expecting a challenge worthy of a genius. What you find is, well, mostly trolls and a very disappointing hat. We leave the throat of the world and descend into the gloomy, troll-infested lowlands of Yalmarch to discuss a legend. If you read the in-game books, specifically A Minor Maze or the various accounts of the First Era, you know the name Shalidor. He is the Nord Archmage, the founder of Winterhold, a man so powerful he supposedly battled a Dwemer clan single-handedly and whispered the college into existence. He is the Einstein, the Merlin, and the Gandalf of Skyrim rolled into one. He built a great maze, a testing ground to filter out the unworthy, promising that those who navigated its twists and turns would find Glamouril, the secret of life itself. The brutally honest truth is that Shalidor was apparently a better marketer than he was a puzzle designer. The famous Shalidor's Maze, located within the ruins of Labyrinthian, is not a mind-bending test of arcane intellect. It is a walk in the park, specifically a very grey stone park, where you match shapes like a toddler playing with a wooden block set. And the secret of life? It turns out the secret of life is a slightly shiny headband that offers less protection than a leather helmet. Let's look at the puzzle. You enter the maze. You find 4 staves lying on the ground. A staff of magelight, a staff of firebolts, etc. You walk a few feet and see a wall with a sigil on it. If the wall has a fire symbol, you shoot it with the fire staff. If it has an alteration symbol, you shoot it with the alteration staff. This is the great filter? This is the test that supposedly baffled the greatest minds of the First Era? It is colour matching 101. The hardest part of the maze is not the magic. It is navigating the terrible pathfinding of the game itself, trying not to get stuck on a piece of loose geometry while a skeever gnaws on your ankle. Core in-game. Fact: completing this ordeal opens a portal to a trial combat. You're transported to a small Oblivion pocket, or perhaps just a different room, to face a Dremora Valkanaz. This is the final exam. A trial by combat. You kill him. It's a standard fight. If you are high level, you one-shot him. If you are low level, you cheese him with a bow. Upon his defeat, you're teleported back to the entrance, and you receive your prize, the Diadem of the Savant. Let's analyse this artifact. The Diadem of the Savant is a circlet. It is unique. It looks fine. It reduces the magicka cost of all spells by 5%. 5%. We just discussed enchanting in the previous section. A novice enchanter can craft a ring that reduces cost by 15%. A master enchanter can reduce cost by 25% or more per school. Shalidor's legendary artifact, the prize for solving his masterwork, is statistically worse than random loot you find in a bandit's chest at level 20. It is a participation trophy. Congratulations, you walk through some walls. Here is a discount coupon for your spells. Furthermore, the diadem is bugged. In many versions of the game, it is classified as light armor. This means if you are a mage using the mage armor perk, which triples your flesh spells if you wear no armor, putting on this mage circlet actually breaks your build. It turns off your magical protection because the game thinks you are wearing a helmet. The ultimate prize for a wizard actively makes the wizard weaker. It is a cruel prank from beyond the grave. Shalidor isn't testing your wisdom, he is testing your patience with Bethesda's coding. There is a nugget of obscure lore regarding Tamriel. The literal translation is the secret of life. Legends say Shalidor stole it from Akatosh, the dragon god of time, or perhaps constructed it from the energies of the Eye of Magnus. Fans speculate that Tamriel was never a physical object, but the knowledge of how to manipulate reality, perhaps a precursor to Chim or the console commands. But in the game, the quest just ends. You get the hat. You get no cosmic truth. You get no explanation. It feels like a questline that was cut short during development, leaving the player standing in the snow holding a mediocre tiara wondering, is that it? The location itself, Labyrinthian, is a fascinating case study in architecture versus functionality. It was once a massive city, likely the capital of the dragon cult. Now, it is a gauntlet of trolls. Frost trolls, dozens of them. The test of Labyrinthian for most players is not magical aptitude. It is, do you have enough fire damage to kill 12 trolls in a row? It is a DPS check, not an IQ test. The sheer number of trolls has become a meme in the community. You don't go there for lore, you go there to harvest troll fat for alchemy. But let's talk about the main dungeon of Labyrinthian, distinct from the maze, where the Staff of Magnus is kept. This is part of the college questline. You're sent here to retrieve the staff to stop the Eye of Magnus. As you delve deeper, you encounter the spectral memories of the previous expedition, led by the Archmage Savos Aaron. This is one of the few times the game attempts environmental storytelling to show the consequences of failure. You see the ghosts of Savos' friends dying one by one. It is tragic. It adds weight to the dungeon. However, the brutally honest reality of this quest is that the puzzle is still just kill everything. You fight a bone dragon, which is undeniably cool, but it fights exactly like a regular dragon, just without the flying. You fight Draugr, you fight Wisp Mothers, and at the end you fight Moroke, a dragon priest. Moroke wields the Staff of Magnus. In the lore, this staff drains magicka and then health. It is a terrifying weapon against mages. In the actual fight, Moroke often bugs out and tries to punch you or uses a lightning spell instead of the staff. The AI doesn't know how to use the super weapon it's holding. You kill him, take his mask, which ironically gives 100% magicka regeneration, a far better reward than Shalidor's diadem, and leave. The Staff of Magnus itself is another disappointment. It is a battery drainer. It shoots a beam of energy that siphons magicka. It looks like a ghostly vacuum cleaner. It doesn't do massive damage. It is a utility tool designed to depower Ancano's shield back at the college. Once that quest is done, it goes on the weapon rack. It is too slow to kill bandits and too niche to use against dragons. The legendary artifacts of the greatest mages in history, Shalidor and Magnus, are reduced to decorative wall ornaments because a generic Daedric sword deals more damage per second. There is a fan theory that Shalidor was a troll, not the monster, but the internet slang kind. He built a maze that looks important but is simple. He promised a secret of life that doesn't exist. He left behind writings that are cryptic and mostly useless. The Shalidor's insights, which you can fetch for Urag Groshub in the college library, are just scrolls. Here is a scroll of Fireball. Thanks, Shalidor. He is the ultimate hype man who delivers nothing. The players who idolize him are chasing a ghost who is laughing at them from Aetherius. And consider the economy of the maze. You find 4 staves, a staff of fear, a staff of mage light, etc. These staves are actually worth a decent amount of gold. The real reward of Shalidor's maze is not the diadem, it is the vendor trash you pick up along the way. You solve the maze, sell the staves to a merchant, and buy training levels in destruction. That is the true insight. Capitalism is the only magic that matters. The Labyrinthian complex also highlights the erratic scaling of the game. Outside, you fight frost trolls, level 22-ish. Inside, you might fight a dragon priest, level 50. The difficulty spike is vertical. A low-level mage wandering into Labyrinthian thinking it is a fun puzzle, area gets absolutely crushed. It teaches you that exploration in Skyrim is often synonymous with suicide if you don't check the level zones on the wiki. Ultimately, Shalidor's insight is a lesson in lowered expectations. We expect grand, reality-warping magic because the lore tells us it exists. We read about mages who sank continents and stopped time, but when we get to the gameplay, we get a hat that gives us a 5% discount. It is a reminder that the Dragonborn is playing in the ruins of a greater age. The magic is gone. The grandeur is gone. We are just scavengers picking through the scraps of giants, wearing their hats and pretending we understand what they knew. But perhaps you are tired of the dusty past. Perhaps you want power that is alive, visceral, and flows through your very veins. You are tired of reading scrolls and solving puzzles. You want to become the monster. We leave the stone walls of the maze and step into the shadows of the night, where eyes glow red and the hunger is eternal. It is time to discuss the Vampire Lord and the bloody sunlight-hating trade-off of becoming a creature of the night. We leave the dusty disappointments of Labyrinthian and step into the shadows, embracing a power that is less about academic study and more about liquidating the local population, literally. We're talking about the Vampire Lord. With the Dawnguard DLC, Bethesda promised us the ultimate gothic power fantasy, the ability to transform into a terrifying bat-like demon, float across the ground and feast on the lifeblood of our enemies. It was pitched as the magical equivalent of the werewolf, but with more style, more spells, and significantly more leather. The brutally honest truth, however, is that playing as a Vampire Lord is essentially playing as a magical hovercraft with steering issues. The moment you press the transformation button, the game shifts. Your camera pulls back, your character model morphs into a grotesque gargoyle, and you begin to float. It looks majestic for exactly 5 seconds. Then you try to walk through a door. The Vampire Lord model is wider and taller than the standard humanoid model. You get stuck on door frames, you get stuck on uneven cobblestones, you get stuck on small shrubs. The Lord of Domination spends half their time wiggling the thumbstick left and right, trying to unclip their wings from a dungeon archway. And let's talk about the combat. You have 2 modes, Floating Magic User and Grounded Claw Fighter. In Magic mode, you primarily use Vampiric Drain. It's a red ball of energy that absorbs health. It sounds great. But there is a core in-game fact that has plagued Vampire Lords for over a decade, the Serana bug. If you have Serana, the main vampire companion of the DLC, as your follower, her presence actively nerfs your Vampiric Drain spell. A scripting error causes the damage of your primary attack to plummet, turning your deadly blood magic into a wet slap. You're hitting enemies with a ball of red mist that barely tickles them. You're the scariest creature in the night, provided you don't bring your vampire girlfriend along, in which case you are a joke. Switching to melee mode is no better. You drop to the ground and start swiping with your claws. The hit detection is generous, to be polite. It's chaotic. You flail around, screen shaking, hoping to connect. But unlike the werewolf, who can ragdoll enemies with sprinting power attacks, the Vampire Lord feels floaty. There is no weight to the violence. You feel like a balloon animal aggressively bumping into people. However, the Vampire Lord has one redeeming quality that almost forgives the clunky movement: Vampiric Grip. This is the telekinesis spell we wish Alteration had. You can reach out, grab an enemy from a distance, lift them into the air, and choke them. Then, you can launch them into the stratosphere, grabbing a fully armoured bandit chief, dangling him over a cliff while he kicks his legs helplessly, and then yeeting him into the horizon is the peak of Skyrim comedy. It never gets old. It is the Darth Vader simulator we didn't know we needed. But even this has a downside. It costs magicka, a lot of it. You can choke 2 guys and then you're out of juice, forced to land and awkwardly slap the 3rd guy with your claws. Now, we must address the bloody trade-off: the sun. Being a vampire in Skyrim is a logistical nightmare. Between 5 AM and 7 PM, you're allergic to the sky. Your health, magicka, and stamina do not regenerate. At all. If you sprint, your stamina bar stays empty. If you cast a spell, your magicka is gone. You are forced to rely on potions or enchantments to function during business hours. This turns the game into a waiting simulator. You finish a dungeon, walk outside, see the sun is up, and immediately press the wait button to fast forward to Oitcome PM. You become a creature of the night not out of roleplay, but out of statistical necessity. This creates a conflict with the rest of the world. Shops are open during the day, quest givers are awake during the day. You're the hero who saves the world, but you can only do it after sunset. "I'm here to sell my loot," you say to Belethor. "Get out, I'm closing," he replies. "But I can't come in earlier, I'll burn." "Not my problem, Dragonborn. You live in a different time zone than everyone else." The Dawnguard DLC did make one massive change to the social stigma. In the base game, if you didn't feed, you reached stage 4 vampirism, and everyone attacked you on sight. You were a monster. It was tense. In Dawnguard, they removed the hostility. Now you can be a starving, red-eyed, pale-skinned nightmare monster, and the guards just say, "Is that fur coming out of your ears?" which is a werewolf line showing how broken the dialogue triggers are. Or, "You have a bad complexion." The threat is gone. You can walk into the Blue Palace and chat with the Jarl while looking like Nosferatu, and nobody cares. It kills the immersion of being a hunted abomination. You aren't a hidden monster. You're just an adventurer with a vitamin D deficiency. There is an obscure lore tidbit regarding the form itself. The Vampire Lord form is a gift from Molag Bal, the Prince of Domination. The lore suggests that by accepting this form, you're pledging your soul to Coldharbour. When you die, you belong to him. The Dragonborn, who has the soul of a dragon, part of Akatosh, is technically creating a celestial custody battle. Does Akatosh claim the dragon soul? Does Molag Bal claim the vampire taint? Fans debate this, but the game ignores it. You can be the listener of the Dark Brotherhood, the Nightingale of Nocturnal, the Champion of Hircine, and a Vampire Lord of Molag Bal simultaneously. You have promised your soul to about 6 different deities. The afterlife is going to be a very awkward legal proceeding. Leveling the Vampire Lord tree is a grind of its own. You earn perks by killing enemies with Vampiric Drain or a power attack bite. The bite animation is a finisher move. It triggers randomly. When an enemy is low health, it is slow. It locks you in place. While you're chewing on a bandit's neck to get your XP, his friends are stabbing you in the back. You take damage during the animation. It creates a perverse incentive where you're trying to farm weak enemies. You stop saving the world and start hunting mud crabs and goats just to unlock the Summon Gargoyle perk. And what of the ultimate goal? The prophecy. Blotting out the sun, you get Oriel's bow, you dip elven arrows in Serana's blood, you shoot the sun. The sky turns a sickly red. The sun is darkened. You can walk freely during the day. It is the ultimate victory. But the world looks terrible. The red filter is oppressive. It washes out all the colours. It's cool for 5 minutes, but playing the entire game under a red haze is depressing. Most players shoot the sun once, say, neat, and then load a previous save because they miss the blue sky. The ultimate reward for the vampire questline is a graphical filter that makes you want to adjust your monitor settings. There is also the ugly factor. When you become a vampire, your character's face changes. Cheeks gaunt, eyes glowing, skin pale. For some, this is cool. For those who spent 3 hours in the character creator sculpting the perfect Nord jawline, it is a tragedy. The game forcibly morphs your face. You look like you haven't slept in a month. There is a whole genre of mods dedicated purely to making vampires not look like bat people. The vanity of the player base is the true weakness of the vampire. Yet, despite the clunky hovering, the Serana bug, and the sun management, players still choose this path. Why? Because of the Necromage perk we mentioned earlier, the stat boost is simply too good to ignore. Being a vampire makes you a better enchanter, a better alchemist, and a better warrior, purely because the game's math is broken. We tolerate the red eyes and the sun damage because we want our enchanted sword to do 10 more points of damage. We sell our humanity not for power, but for efficiency. But perhaps you don't want to transform. Perhaps you want to wield magic without spending your own magicka. You want to outsource the cost to a stick. You look at the staves dropped by dragon priests and wizards and think, this is the answer. We leave the bloody feast and pick up the wooden rod. It is time to discuss staves, and why being a wizard with a staff feels less like Gandalf and more like a man carrying a very heavy, rechargeable battery. We leave the blood-soaked feasts of the vampire and the echoing shouts of the mountain to pick up something a bit more tangible, a bit more wooden splinter. We are talking about staves. In the collective consciousness of fantasy, the staff is the symbol of the wizard. Gandalf has his staff. Saruman has his staff. It is a badge of office, a conduit for earth-shattering power, a walking stick for the weary traveller. You expect to plant it in the ground and shout, "You shall not pass." You expect it to be an extension of your very soul, but the brutally honest truth about staves in Skyrim is that they are not mystical conduits. They are magical firearms with terrible ergonomics. Wielding a staff doesn't feel like channeling the arcane energies of Aetherius. It feels like carrying a heavy wooden assault rifle that runs on AA batteries. Let's analyse the fundamental mechanic. A staff does not use your magicka. It has its own internal charge bar. When you fire a staff of fireballs, you are not casting the spell. The stick is. You are merely the operator. This creates a strange disconnect. You can be a level 1 orc barbarian with an intelligence of 0, pick up a staff of paralyze, and suddenly you are a master of alteration. It democratizes magic to the point of absurdity. It turns the arcane arts into a point-and-click interface for the magically illiterate. You aren't a wizard, you are a user. The battery metaphor is literal. Every time you use the staff, the little white bar drains. When it empties, the staff is just a heavy club that does negligible physical damage. This forces you into the recharge loop, which is the most immersion-breaking activity in the game. You're in the heat of battle, fighting a dragon priest. Your staff runs dry. You pause the game, the music stops. You open your inventory. You scroll to the staff. You press the recharge button. You select a soul gem. A sound effect plays. Shh. Clink. The bar fills up. You unpause. You fire 3 more shots. Repeat. You're not a battle mage. You're a technician constantly swapping out the power cells in your equipment. It reduces the grandeur of combat to a resource management spreadsheet. And let's talk about the weight. Staves are heavy. Most weigh 8 units. A dragonbone sword weighs roughly the same. If you want to be a versatile mage with a staff for every occasion, fire for trolls, shock for mages, fear for crowds, you are carrying 50 pounds of lumber. You look less like a wise sage and more like a travelling firewood merchant. This weight penalty makes them unattractive to pure mages, who need that carry weight for loot, and unattractive to warriors, who would rather carry a shield. The staff sits in this awkward middle ground, too heavy to be a backup, too clunky to be a main weapon. The animation further ruins the Gandalf fantasy. In the movies, wizards use staves to block, to strike, to cast sweeping waves of force. In Skyrim, you hold the staff out in front of you with one hand, like a pistol. You don't swing it. You don't slam it into the ground. You just point the tip at the enemy and pull the trigger. It looks rigid. It looks mechanical. You're essentially a riot policeman holding a tear gas launcher. The block functionality is virtually non-existent. Bashing with a staff is slow and does barely any stagger. You're holding a long pole, yet you cannot keep enemies at bay with it. There is, however, one staff that defies the laws of boredom and embraces the chaos, the Wabberjack. Core in-game. Fact. This Daedric artifact of Sheogorath is the only staff that feels truly magical, because it is completely unpredictable. You point it at a giant and he might turn into a sweet roll, or a pile of gold, or an angry Dremora who kills you. It is the random number generator weaponized. It captures the essence of raw, untamed magic better than any destruction spell. But because it is so unreliable, nobody uses it for serious combat. It is a toy. You use it to turn your follower into a chicken for a laugh, then put it back in the chest. It is a joke weapon in a world that takes itself too seriously. Then we have the Sanguine Rose. This is the I win button for the lazy adventurer. It summons a Dremora Lord. As we discussed in the Conjuration section, Dremora Lords are the most efficient killers in the game. The Sanguine Rose allows a stealth archer or a two-handed warrior to have a pocket tank on demand without investing a single perk point in Conjuration. It is the ultimate crutch. The staff of the Daedric Prince of Debauchery is mostly used by players who just want someone else to fight the boss for them. It trivializes the difficulty curve. Why learn to block when you can just press a button and summon a demon to take the hit? But let's look at the darker side of staff acquisition. The Skull of Corruption. This artifact of Vermina, the Prince of Nightmares, has a damage output that scales based on dreams absorbed. To charge it, you have to cast it on sleeping people. This means the Dragonborn has to creep into people's houses at night, stand over their beds, and suck the dreams out of their heads. It is incredibly creepy. It is predatory. You're stealing their REM sleep to power your laser beam. And the payoff? If you don't keep it charged with dreams, it's a mediocre weapon. The maintenance required to make it viable involves being a nightly stalker. It's just too much work for too little reward. There is a brutally honest truth regarding staff scaling. For the most part, staves do not scale with your skill level. A staff of fireballs does 40 damage, whether you have level 10 destruction or level 100 destruction. Though some perks like augmented flames do apply in a somewhat inconsistent manner, this means staves have a shelf life. They are powerful in the early game. Finding a staff of paralysis at level 10 is like finding a nuclear launch key, but by level 50 they are pea shooters. They don't grow with you. They are static artifacts of a bygone era, destined to be outpaced by your own hands. The Dragonborn DLC attempted to fix this with the Staff Enchanter in Tel Mithrin. An obscure lore tidbit is that creating staves was a lost art in Skyrim until you helped Master Neloth. Finally, you can craft your own. You can choose the spell. You can make a staff of incinerate. But the requirements are absurd. You need heartstones, found only on Solstheim. You need unenchanted staves. You need high enchanting skill. By the time you unlock the ability to craft these custom staves, you're likely so powerful that you don't need them. It is a late-game solution to an early-game problem. The visual feedback of staves also varies wildly. The destruction staves shoot projectiles, but the illusion staves, you point the stick, a little squiggle of light comes out and maybe something happens. It lacks impact. Using a staff of fear feels like waving a laser pointer at a cat. If the enemy resists, there is no feedback. You just stand there, stick extended, looking foolish while the bandit charges you. However, there is a distinct economic reality to staves. They are money. Staves are some of the highest value to weight items in the game. A staff of banishing or staff of paralysis sells for thousands of gold. For many players, staves are not weapons. They are bearer bonds. You clear a dungeon, see a staff on the boss's corpse, and your first thought isn't unlimited power. It is, I wonder if the Riverwood trader has enough gold to buy this. You become an arms dealer, flooding the market with magical weaponry that the shopkeepers will never use. There is also the staff in left hand, sword in right hand build, known as Gandalfing. It looks cool on the cover of the box. In practice, it is clunky. You can't block, you can't zoom in. You are dual wielding without the dual wielding attack speed bonuses. You are trading defense for a limited amount of ranged poke damage. It is a style that screams, I don't know what I want to be, and usually ends with the player dying because they couldn't block a power attack. The lore tells us that staves are crafted with heartwood and potent enchantments, often containing the soul of the creator. They are personal. In the game, they are mass-produced loot. You find them in Falmer chests. You find them in Draugr urns. They are everywhere. The mystique is gone. When every bandit chief has a staff of ice spikes, the title of wizard loses its meaning. Ultimately, the staff in Skyrim is a symbol of utility over identity. It is a tool for the magicka-starved, a backup plan for the warrior, and a paycheck for the thief. It lacks the soul, ironic considering it runs on souls, of true spellcasting. It is a heavy wooden battery pack that promises the world but mostly just delivers a few fireballs before demanding a recharge. But perhaps you are tired of external magic. Perhaps you want to internalize the power. You want to consume the world to strengthen yourself. You look at the cheese wheels, the cabbages, and the strange glowing mushrooms, and you realize that true power comes from the stomach. We leave the wooden crutches behind and enter the kitchen. It is time to discuss alchemy and the physiological horror of the pause menu. We leave the wooden crutches of Staves and the dusty scrolls of the Academy to enter the most visceral, terrifying, and biologically impossible school of magic in Skyrim, the digestive tract. We are talking about alchemy, and by extension, the consumption of food. While other mages manipulate the elements or the mind, the alchemist manipulates the pause menu to turn the Dragonborn into a bottomless pit of gluttony and chemical warfare. The brutally honest truth about combat in Skyrim is that it is often decided not by skill, but by how much cheese you have in your pocket. Consider the pause menu mechanic. You're fighting a legendary dragon. You are on fire. Your health is at 5%. In any other reality, you are dead. In Skyrim, you press a button. Time stops. The dragon freezes mid-roar. The fire stops flickering. In this frozen moment of eternity, you open your inventory and proceed to eat 47 Edar cheese wheels, 12 cabbage soups, 6 venison chops, and wash it all down with 15 minor healing potions. You press the button again. Time resumes. You're instantly fully healed. The dragon, who just saw you at death's door, watches as your wounds knit together in a microsecond, powered by a sudden intake of 20,000 calories. The physiological horror of this cannot be overstated. The Dragonborn's stomach is a portal to oblivion. There is no chewing animation. There is no fullness mechanic. There is no vomiting. You simply delete matter from existence and convert it into health. If we applied real-world biology to this, the Dragonborn would explode. Their blood sugar would spike to levels that would turn their blood into syrup. They would be incapacitated by the sheer gastric distress of digesting an entire farm's worth of produce in a split second. Yet, they fight on, burping the song of the Dragonborn. This leads to the hoarding mentality. A veteran Skyrim player picks up every piece of food they see, not because they are role-playing a gourmet, but because they know that in a pinch, that sack of flour and those raw potatoes are hit points. We become raccoons, scavenging through barrels in Riften, stuffing raw leeks into our armour. I might need this apple to survive a fireball later, we tell ourselves. The Dragonborn is walking around with 50 pounds of spoiling meat and dairy in their backpack, which raises serious questions about hygiene and the smell that must accompany our hero. But let's talk about the science of alchemy itself. The levelling process is a nightmare of trial and error, specifically the tasting mechanic. To learn the first effect of an ingredient, you have to eat it. Core in-game fact: this means the Dragonborn walks through the wilderness, picking up flowers, bugs and body parts and putting them directly into their mouth. You eat a blue mountain flower, you eat a butterfly wing, you eat a giant's toe. Let's pause on that. You kill a giant, cut off his toe, which is likely covered in mammoth dung and dirt, and you eat it. It damages your stamina, but you learn something. Ah yes, tastes like foot and exhaustion. The tasting session usually happens in bulk. You return to town with a bag full of ingredients. You open the menu and eat one of everything. The sound effects are a cacophony of crunches and gulps. The screen flashes green, red and blue as you suffer paralysis, poison, frenzy and invisibility all at once. You convulse on the floor of the alchemy shop, foaming at the mouth, while Arcadia watches politely and says, "You look a bit pale, could it be ataxia?" No, Arcadia, it's the fact that I just ate a Falmerir and a Daedra heart. Once you start crafting, the absurdity escalates. The potions you make are often nonsensical. You mix a flower and a mushroom and get a potion of Fortify carry weight. How does a liquid make you stronger at lifting things? Is it steroids? Is it altering gravity? The game doesn't explain, it just works. You chug a blue bottle and suddenly you can carry 10 more dragon bones. The logic of drinking your buffs leads to the pre-fight chug. Before a boss, you drink a potion of resist fire, a potion of Fortify one-handed, a potion of regenerate health, and a potion of Fortify block. You're mixing a chemical cocktail in your stomach that should by all rights liquefy your liver. In The Witcher, there is a toxicity meter. If you drink too much, you die. In Skyrim, your liver is made of ebony. You can drink 50 potions back-to-back with zero side effects other than becoming a glowing, invincible god. Then there is the economy of alchemy. It is the single easiest way to break the game's gold balance. You find blue butterfly wings and blue mountain flowers everywhere. They are free. You mix them. You get a potion of damage magicka regen. It is useless to you, but it sells for 300 gold. You create wealth out of weeds. You go from a penniless prisoner to a millionaire tycoon simply by mowing the lawn and catching bugs. The Dragonborn is the greatest pharmaceutical scam artist in history, selling useless, watery mixtures to merchants who are compelled by code to buy them. Here is a potion that damages your stamina and heals your magicka. It tastes like dirt. That will be 500 gold. I'll take it, says the merchant. Now, let's look at poisons. The poisoned perk in the pickpocket tree allows you to reverse pickpocket poisons onto enemies to damage them. This is the silent assassin fantasy. You sneak up to a bandit, slip a bottle of deadly nightshade extract into his pocket, and he dies? How? Does the bottle break? Does he immediately drink it? The mechanics imply that the mere presence of the poison in his pants is fatal. It is osmosis death. It is hilarious to watch a bandit keel over because you put a flower in his pocket, but it makes absolutely no sense. There is an obscure lore tidbit regarding the Jarin root. You get exactly one of these in the entire game, during the Dark Brotherhood questline. It is the most potent poison ingredient in existence. If you use it to make a poison, it can deal thousands of points of damage. It is the one-shot kill. The brutally honest truth is that most players suffer from too awesome to use syndrome. We keep the Jarin root in a safe in our house, saving it for a special occasion that never comes. We beat the game, defeat Alduin, and kill Miraak, all while the ultimate weapon sits in a cupboard next to a pile of sweet rolls. We are hoarders of death, terrified of wasting the perfect kill on an imperfect enemy. The alchemy table itself is a place of madness. You are mixing ectoplasm, ghost goo, with void salts from a storm atronach. You are mixing human flesh with imp stool. The list of ingredients includes literal human hearts. Where do you get these? From the Daedra heart vendor? No, usually from questionable sources or the Quest of the Dead. The Dragonborn is casually carrying around human organs for science. If the guards checked your inventory, you would be locked up in the Sidna mine forever. You are a walking biohazard. Let's not forget the Fortify Restoration loop we touched on earlier. While enchanting seals the deal, alchemy is the engine. By drinking a potion that makes your alchemy gear stronger, then taking off the gear and putting it back on, you glitch the numbers. You repeat this until you can craft a potion of Fortify Health that gives you 100,000 HP. At that point, you have transcended the game. You're a biological singularity. The potion likely tastes like pure math and ozone. You drink it, and the concept of damage becomes a distant memory. But even without glitches, the paralysis poison is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter how much health the enemy has. It doesn't matter if they are a legendary warrior. If you coat your arrow in Canis root and imp stool, they go down. They lie there, stiff as a board, while you poke them to death. It turns epic duels into embarrassing beatdowns. The Dragonborn isn't a warrior. They're a pharmacist with a mean streak. The spider crafting in the Dragonborn DLC deserves a mention. You find an imbuing chamber where you can shove albino spider pods and gems into a machine to create throwable spiders, mind control spiders, exploding flame spiders. It is alchemy gone wrong. It is biological horror weaponized. You're throwing living grenades that scuttle onto people's faces and explode. It is arguably the most disturbing way to fight in the game, yet it is tucked away in a barrow on Solstheim, ignored by most players who stick to standard potions. It highlights the weird, experimental depths of magic that exist on the fringes, where science becomes throwing bugs at people. We must also address the White Phial. This legendary artifact, the lifework of Norelian, is a bottle that refills itself. In the lore, it is a masterpiece. In gameplay, it refills once, every 24 hours. And the potion inside is, okay, it's a standard fortify or restore effect. You went through a massive dungeon, watched an old man die of obsession, and repaired a legendary artifact just to get a free Gatorade once a day. It is underwhelming. The generated loot potions you find in chests are often better. The legend fails to live up to the mass-produced reality. Finally, there is the visual of the battle aftermath. You stand victorious over the dragon. But look at yourself. You're likely glowing green from a stamina potion, blue from a shield spell, and red from a healing potion. You're vibrating with chemical energy. You've just consumed 3 days' worth of food in 10 seconds. You're not a hero. You're a bloated, chemically dependent demigod who needs to burp. Alchemy teaches us that the body is just a vessel for buffs. It treats biology as a suggestion. It allows you to pause time and eat your way out of death. It is the most video game of all the magic systems, breaking the fourth wall by acknowledging that as long as the menu is open, you are immortal. You can be mid-air, falling off a cliff, and eat a bowl of soup before you hit the ground to survive. It is the magic of the glutton, the hoarder, and the desperate. But perhaps you're tired of relying on potions. Perhaps you're tired of getting hit at all. You want to shrug off magic like water off a duck's back. You want your very blood to reject the arcane. We leave the alchemy lab and look at our own heritage. It is time to discuss magic resistance, and why the Bretons are the only race that truly understands how to deal with wizards. We leave the bubbling cauldrons and the chemically induced immortality of the alchemist to discuss the single most important defensive stat in the entire game. Armor rating is nice. It stops bandits from turning you into a pincushion. But armor does absolutely nothing against the true terror of Skyrim, the enemy mage. We have all experienced it. You are a level 30 warrior clad in full orcish plate, feeling invincible. You kick open a door to a dungeon, confident in your steel. At the end of the hall stands a frail old man in robes. He raises a hand. An ice storm flies toward you. It hits. You die instantly. Your heavy armor, your shield, your helmet, useless. You have just been victimized by the brutally honest truth that magic resistance is the only stat that actually matters when the difficulty ramps up. This brings us to the Bretons. In the character creator, the Breton is often overlooked. They are short. They are visually indistinct, looking like slightly smaller Imperials. Their lore description paints them as the bureaucrats and court mages of High Rock, a race of political schemers and half-elves. They lack the raw strength of the Orc or the natural resistance of the Nord. But the Breton possesses the Breton blood passive, a flat 25% resistance to all magic. In the brutal calculus of Skyrim, this makes them the superior race. While the Nord is freezing to death in a firestorm and the High Elf is exploding from a shock spell, the Breton is standing there, checking their nails, mildly inconvenienced by the apocalypse. The magic resistance mechanic is distinct from elemental resistance. If you have 50% fire resistance, you take half damage from fire. If you have 50% magic resistance, you take half damage from fire, frost, shock, poison, disease, and raw magicka damage. It is the catch-all shield. The game caps this resistance at 85%. This is the magic number. If you reach the cap, a fireball that would normally deal 100 damage deals 15. A legendary dragon's breath becomes a warm breeze. A vampire lord's drain becomes a tickle. The goal of every min-maxer is to hit this cap as quickly as possible. This leads to the Book of Love quest. Core in-game. Fact: if you travel to the Temple of Mara in Riften, the priestess Dinya Balu sends you on a quest to spread love across Skyrim. It is a non-violent, sappy quest where you help a girl in Everstead choose between two suitors and help an old couple reunite. It feels completely out of place in a game about civil war and world-eating dragons. You are essentially playing the Bachelor Tamriel edition, but the reward, the Agent of Mara passive ability, it grants a permanent 115% magic resistance. This is non-negotiable. Every savvy player does this quest immediately. We endure the bad poetry and the awkward romance dialogue not because we believe in love, but because we are terrified of getting one shot by a lightning bolt. We are mercenaries for Mara, trading matchmaking services for survival. Combine a Breton, 25%, with the Lordstone, 25%, and the Agent of Mara, 15%. That is 65% magic resistance with 0 gear equipped. You can be naked, holding a sweet roll, and you are tankier against magic than a fully armoured Nord warrior. Throw in 2 pieces of enchanted jewellery and you hit the 85% cap. This trivialises the most dangerous enemies in the game. Dragon priests with their terrifying masks and high-level destruction staves become pathetic. They float around, blasting you with incinerate, expecting you to crumble. Instead, you just walk up to them and hit them with a mace. The Breton advantage turns the game's hard mode into a leisurely stroll. But there is a second layer to this defense, spell absorption. This is the coin flip defense. Unlike resistance, which reduces damage, absorption gives you a percentage chance to completely negate the spell and convert it into magicka. The Breton racial power, Dragonskin, grants 50% spell absorption for 60 seconds once a day. Combine this with the Atronak Stone, 50%, and you have 100% spell absorption. You become immune to magic. Not resistant, immune. You can stand in a stream of dragonfire and your health bar will not move. Instead, your magicka bar will refill. It is the ultimate no. However, there is an obscure lore tidbit, or rather a mechanics bug, regarding this immunity. Spell absorption is coded to absorb magical effects. This includes things you might not expect. If you have 100% spell absorption, and you try to summon a creature, the game often treats your own summon spell as an external magical effect targeting you. Your body eats the summon. You cast Conjure Dremora Lord, your magicka bar flashes and nothing happens. You have absorbed your own demon. This forces Bretons who use Dragonskin to be careful about being conjurers. You become so resistant to magic that you become a magical black hole, consuming your own allies before they can manifest. Let's discuss the physiological horror of Ice Storm. Of all the spells used by enemy NPCs, Ice Storm is the most broken. It is a slow-moving cloud of frost. It penetrates walls. It hits multiple times per second as it passes through your hitbox. Without magic resistance, a single cast from a generic bandit hedge wizard can kill a high-level player instantly. The kill cam triggers, and you watch your character ragdoll before you even realised you were under attack. This spell alone is responsible for more reloads than Alduin himself. It forces the player to prioritise resistance over damage. You might want to wear that helmet that gives plus 140% bow damage, but you need the necklace that gives plus 120% magic resist, because otherwise, the Cryomancer in the next room will delete your save file. The interaction with shields is also noteworthy. The Elemental Protection perk in the block tree reduces fire, frost and shock damage by 50% when blocking. This stacks with magic resistance. If you are a Breton, with max resistance and this perk, hiding behind a shield, you are mathematically indestructible against magic. You are a bunker. The visual of a dragon bathing you in fire while you stand perfectly still, behind a piece of metal, taking 0 damage, is the peak of defensive satisfaction. It reinforces the idea that in the Elder Scrolls, survival isn't about dodging, it's about stacking percentages until the numbers give up and leave you alone. The community debate often centres on Breton versus Orc versus High Elf. The High Elf gets extra magicka, great for offence. The Orc gets Berserker Rage, double damage, great for melee. But the Breton is consistently ranked as the best all-rounder, specifically because magic resistance is so hard to get elsewhere without using enchantment slots. If you play a High Elf, you have to use your ring and necklace slots to catch up to where the Breton starts naturally. The Breton frees up your gear slots for fun things like more damage. Therefore, the boring generic human race is actually the power gamer's choice. It's the corporate choice. Dull, efficient, and impossible to kill. There is also the Mirax robes factor. In the Dragonborn DLC, Mirax's gear offers spell absorption. If you wear his robes, gloves and boots, you get a chance to absorb dragon breath. But let's be honest, Mirax's robes look weird. They have tentacles, the mask looks like a calamari dish. To achieve magical immunity via gear often requires looking like a cultist from the deep. The Breton achieves it while wearing regular clothes. It is a victory of style as much as function. We must also mention the enemies who ignore resistance. While rare, there are damage types that slip through. Falling damage is the big one. Gravity is the one wizard you cannot resist. No amount of Breton blood will save you if you slip off the college bridge. And purely physical traps, like the swinging log or the Dwemer spinning blades, don't care about your anti-magic shield. You can tank a meteorite, but a sharp piece of metal on a hinge will still ruin your day. It keeps you humble. Finally, consider the roleplay implication. The Breton is naturally resistant to the very forces they often study. They are walking contradictions. They are the best mages because they don't fear magic, but they are also the best mage killers for the same reason. A Breton witch hunter build is terrifyingly effective. You walk through the enemy's firestorm immune to their best efforts and put an arrow in their chest. It changes the dynamic of the wizard duel. It's not a back and forth exchange of spells. It's you ignoring their existence until you are close enough to end them. So, we accept the Breton supremacy. We do the love quest. We visit the Lord Stone. We clad ourselves in invisible armour that turns the roaring fires of oblivion into a cosy fireplace. We stop fearing the blue bar of the enemy and start laughing at it. But now that we are safe, now that we can stand in the fire without burning, we look at our own hands. We want to cast the big spells. We want to unleash the ultimate power of the master level. We equip the ritual spells, ready to decimate the battlefield. And then we realise that while we were busy becoming a tank, the casting animations for master spells were designed by someone who seemingly wanted us to die of old age. We leave the comfortable safety of our Breton resistance and step onto the training grounds of the master wizard. We have spent hours grinding. We have roasted thousands of mud crabs, turned hundreds of iron ores into gold, and soul-trapped enough horses to depopulate the Whiterun stables. We have reached skill level 100. We approach the masters of the college, Ferelda, Tolfdir, Drivis, and demand the ultimate secrets of the arcane. They send us on quests to the far reaches of the map to retrieve ancient tomes. We return, triumphant, and open the book to learn the master spells. We equip them. We prepare to unleash hell. And then we realise that the most powerful magic in Skyrim essentially requires you to stand perfectly still and ask the bandits nicely to stop hitting you for 5 seconds. The brutally honest truth about master level spells is that they are designed for a turn-based RPG, but they exist in an action game. The core mechanic of these spells is the ritual animation. Unlike lower level spells that can be fired instantly or charged while moving, master spells require both hands. You press the buttons, your character stops moving. You begin a slow, elaborate dance, waving your arms, gathering energy, floating slightly off the ground. It looks majestic, it feels cinematic. But in the frantic, chaotic melee of a Skyrim dungeon, it is essentially a suicide note. Let's look at Firestorm. This is the Destruction Master spell. The description promises a massive room-clearing explosion. The reality? The explosion is centered on you. This means to use it effectively, you must run into the middle of a group of enemies armed with warhammers and greatswords, and then stand still for 3 seconds to charge up. You're a squishy mage wearing robes. You're purposefully surrounding yourself with people who want to kill you, and then giving them a free window to do so. If you get hit during the wind-up, the spell cancels. You stagger. You have to start over. Most mages who try to cast Firestorm die before the fire ever leaves their hands. You're a living bomb with a very long, very easily extinguished fuse. Then we have Lightning Storm. Visually, this is the peak of the game. You channel a continuous beam of pure electricity, like a Kamehameha from Dragon Ball Z. It vaporizes enemies. It turns them into ash piles. But there is a catch. Once the beam starts, you cannot move your feet. You are a turret. Your turning speed is drastically reduced. If the dragon you are shooting decides to strafe to the left, you cannot track it fast enough. You're slowly rotating, firing your laser into the empty sky, while the dragon laughs and bites you from behind. It is a spell for stationary targets, but everything in Skyrim moves. It is the most powerful weapon in the game, provided your enemy agrees to stand on a clearly marked X. The comparison to expert level spells makes this even more painful. Consider the Thunderbolt spell. It is instant. It does high damage. With the impact perk, it staggers enemies. You can dual cast Thunderbolt twice in the time it takes to wind up one lightning storm. The DPS, damage per second, of the lower level spells is often higher, simply because you can fire them faster and you don't miss as often. The master spells are burst damage, but the sustained damage of an expert mage is almost always superior. You're trading efficiency for theatricality. You aren't casting Firestorm because it's the best option. You're casting it because you want to look cool in a screenshot. Core in-game fact. The stagger mechanic is the bane of the ritual caster. Any amount of stagger cancels the spell. A power attack? Cancel. An arrow? Cancel. A shout? Cancel. This means that against high-level enemies, the exact enemies you need master spells to defeat, casting them is nearly impossible without support. You need a tank follower to draw aggro, or you need to hide in a corner. The solitary power fantasy dissolves. You're not an all-powerful wizard, you're artillery that needs an infantry escort to function. There is, however, one specific workaround that the community has discovered, an interaction that highlights the desperate creativity of the player base, the become ethereal shout. We mentioned earlier that this shout is mostly used as a parachute, but for a master wizard, it is the safety off switch. You shout Fimzi Gron to become invulnerable. While ethereal, you cannot attack, but you can begin the charge up animation for a master spell. The ethereal state lasts just long enough to complete the ritual. As you release the spell, the ethereal effect breaks, and the damage goes out. It is the ethereal cast combo. It requires specific timing and cooldown management, but it is the only reliable way to use Firestorm on legendary difficulty without being decapitated. You have to use dragon magic just to make regular magic usable. Let's discuss Blizzard, the Frost Master spell. It creates a swirling storm around you. It looks chaotic and messy, blinding you to what is actually happening. But there is an infamous, obscure lore tidbit, a bug, regarding this spell. In the game's code, the damage of Blizzard is calculated based on the caster's own magic and frost resistance. If you are a Nord, 50% frost resist, or a Breton with the magic resistance cap we just praised, Blizzard does less damage to enemies. Your own resistance dampens the spell you're casting. To maximize damage with Blizzard, you technically need to lower your own defenses, making yourself vulnerable to your own storm. It is a broken, backward mechanic that punishes you for building a good character. The better your wizard is, the worse this spell becomes. Then we have the Master Illusion spells, Harmony, Hysteria, Mayhem. These have a massive radius. They are arguably the most useful of the bunch because you can cast them from a safe distance, usually before the enemies even see you. but the wind-up is still excruciating. You're standing in the middle of Whiterun, arms raised, green light swirling, looking like you're about to drop the beat at a rave. The guards watch you, the citizens watch you, and then, boom, everyone is calm. It works, but it takes so long that you could have just walked past them. And if you miss one high-level enemy who resists the spell, you're now standing still with no magicka left, staring at an angry vampire who was not invited to the party. The quest to obtain these spells is a story of frustration in itself. The Destruction Ritual spell quest involves Feralda giving you a book, Power of the Elements, which contains a riddle. You have to travel to 3 specific locations in Skyrim: Windward Ruins, North Skybound Watch, Four Skull Lookout, and cast a spell on a pedestal. It sounds like a grand pilgrimage. In reality, it is a fast travel fetch quest. You look up the locations on the wiki because the riddle is vague. You go there, you shoot the book with a spell, you get the next page. It feels like homework. There is no epic boss fight. There is no trial of spirit. You are just getting your parking ticket stamped at 3 different locations to validate your degree. The Dragonhide spell, Master Alteration, deserves a special mention for its redundancy. As we discussed, it gives 80% physical damage reduction, but the cast time is so long that you have to cast it before combat. It lasts 30 seconds, longer with perks. By the time you find the enemy, 10 seconds are gone. You fight for 20 seconds, then it fades. You cannot recast it in mid-combat because you will die during the animation. So you're left with a defense that is only active for the opening handshake of the duel. It is a buffing spell that takes longer to cast than the duration of most fights. There is also the magicka cost issue. Master spells are wildly expensive. Even with the Master Destruction perk, casting Lightning Storm drains your bar rapidly. If you miss, that's it. You're empty. You're a wizard without mana, which is just a civilian in a dress. This forces you to rely on the enchanting loop we discussed earlier. To make master spells viable, you need gear that reduces the cost to 0. The game balance is circular. The spells are too expensive to use naturally, so you have to break the economy with enchanting to use them, at which point they become overpowered and boring. There is no middle ground. The visual noise is another factor. Firestorm and Blizzard fill the screen with particle effects. You can't see the enemy. You can't see the loot. You can't see the trap on the floor. You're blind, firing into a kaleidoscope of elemental fury. It is spectacular, yes, but tactically messy. You finish the spell, the smoke clears, and you look around confused. Did I get them? Am I dead? Where is Lydia? Usually Lydia is on the floor, groaning, because she walked into your apocalypse. Friendly fire with master spells is almost guaranteed. You cannot aim Firestorm. If your follower is in the room, they are getting burned. And yet, despite the inefficiency, the vulnerability, and the friendly fire, we still use them. Why? Because the sound design is incredible. The deep bass rumble of Lightning Storm charging up, the crackle of Blizzard, the sheer force of the audio makes you feel powerful, even if the math says you're being inefficient. Bethesda nailed the aesthetic of the Archmage, even if they failed the mechanics. We cast them because we want to be the person on the cover of the box. We want the spectacle. We want to end the fight not with a whimper, but with a bang that crashes the game engine. But as the smoke clears and the magicka bar slowly regenerates, we realise that for all our bluster, for all our explosions, we are still bound by the linear flow of time. We cast, we wait, we recharge. We are mortal. But there is an order of mages who have stepped beyond these limitations. They do not just cast spells, they edit the timeline. They appear, they freeze the world, and they vanish. We end our journey by looking at the true masters of magic, the ones who make the Dragonborn look like a novice with a sparkler. We look to the Psijic Order and their superior, unavailable time magic. We end our chronicle tonight not with a bang, but with a pause, a literal pause. Throughout this journey, we have discussed the limitations of the Dragonborn's magic, the cooldowns, the magicka costs, the underwhelming damage. We have painted a picture of a wizard who is constantly struggling against the game's mechanics to feel powerful. But there is a group in Skyrim that laughs at these limitations. They do not worry about magicka bars. They do not worry about casting times. They are the Skyrik Order, and their existence is the final brutally honest truth. Real magic isn't about throwing fireballs. It's about editing the server code of reality itself. Remember your first encounter with them in the College of Winterhold. You're standing in the Archmage's quarters, listening to Tolfdir drone on about something or other. Suddenly, the world stops. The dust motes freeze in the air. Tolfdir is mid-sentence, mouth open, paralysed in time, and in walks Quaranir, a monk in yellow robes, moving casually through the frozen moment. He speaks to you, looks around, and then leaves. Time resumes. Tolfdir has no idea what happened. This isn't a spell you can learn. This isn't slow time, the shout that lasts for 10 seconds. This is absolute temporal dominance. The Psijic Order operates on a level that makes the Dragonborn look like a child playing with a sparkler. Core in-game fact. The Sigics are based on the Isle of Artaeum, but you cannot find this island on the map. Why? Because they didn't just cast an invisibility spell, they removed the entire island from the world. They essentially took their ball and went home to a different dimension because they didn't like the political climate of Tamriel. This is the ultimate defensive magic. We rely on stoneflesh to protect our bodies. The Sigics rely on removing themselves from existence to protect their privacy. It is the magical equivalent of the ultimate do not disturb sign. The presence of the Sigics highlights the admin versus user dynamic. The Dragonborn is a user. You have permissions to break things, to kill things, and to shout. The Sigics are the admins. They show up when the system is crashing. Consider the end of the college questline. The Eye of Magnus is destabilizing. Anomalies are spawning. The world is about to unmake itself. You, the newly appointed Archmage, are standing there with your Staff of Magnus, wondering what to do. The Sigics simply teleport in, surround the eye and say, "We'll take this." They don't struggle. They don't roll dice for damage. They simply confiscate the nuclear weapon. "You're not ready for this," they say, effectively patting you on the head. They treat the most powerful mage in Skyrim like a toddler who found a loaded gun. There is a deep frustration in the community regarding their gear. The Psijic robes are arguably the most distinct, intricate and wizard-like robes in the game. They look ancient and mysterious. Can you obtain them? No, not without console commands or mods. The game dangles the aesthetic of true mastery in front of you and says, you can look like a hobo in Winterhold robes, but you cannot look like a master of the old ways. It reinforces the hierarchy. You are the hero of the story, but you're not at the top of the food chain. The Sigic philosophy, the old ways, suggests that magic is not something you cast, but a spirit force that binds the ancestors and the world. While we are busy crunching numbers to get 25% more fire damage, they are meditating on the nature of change. They view the Dragonborn's frantic questing as petty squabbles. Civil war, dragons. To a Sigic, these are blips on the radar. They only intervene when the Mundus itself is threatened. This makes our struggles feel small. We are fighting for the fate of a province. They are maintaining the stability of the file directory. Fan theories abound regarding their true power. Some speculate that the Sigics have achieved Chim, the state of lucid dreaming within the reality of the Godhead, allowing them to reshape the world at will. Others believe they are simply hoarding dangerous technology, acting as the Brotherhood of Steel of the Elder Scrolls universe. But the result is the same. They possess a superior time magic that renders our slow time shout adorable by comparison. When we shout, we move a bit faster than our enemies. When they cast, the world halts. This contrast serves as the perfect bookend to our examination of Skyrim's magic. We started with the disappointment of flames that don't burn, and ended with monks who can pause the universe. It reminds us that for all our leveling, for all our perks, for all our enchanted gear, there is always a bigger fish. There is always a level of magic that is just out of reach, locked away in cutscenes and lore, keeping the mystery alive. The Dragonborn may be the ultimate warrior, but in the face of the Psijic Order we are just a very loud, very energetic novice. So, we watch them fade away, taking the Eye of Magnus with them, leaving us in the cold hall of Winterhold. We look at our hands sparking with regular mundane lightning. It may not be time-stopping magic, it may not be world-ending power, but it's ours. And as the Sigics retreat to their hidden island, we have a world to explore, cheese to eat and bandits to paralyze, and really isn't that enough? And so, the fire dies down in the hearth of the college. The crackle of the lightning spell fades into silence, and the great doors of the Hall of the Elements swing shut, locking out the howling winds of the Sea of Ghosts. We have travelled a long road tonight, Loremasters. We have laughed at the lukewarm flames, sighed at the heavy staves and shaken our heads at the logic of eating 40 potatoes in a single second. We have stripped away the glamour of the arcane to look at the rusty, creaky, beautiful machinery underneath. The magic of Skyrim isn't perfect. It's a little broken, a little unbalanced, and often a little silly. But as the embers glow a soft, dying red, we realise that these imperfections are what make the journey ours. It is the struggle to find that one spell tome, the panic of running out of magicka, and the quiet triumph of finally reaching the armor cap that keeps us coming back to these frozen lands. Now, let the weight of your inventory drop. Let the worries of cooldowns and perk trees drift away like smoke up the chimney. You're safe here. No dragons circling overhead, no frost trolls waiting on the path, no couriers running up to interrupt your rest. Just the warmth of the fire and the steady, comforting hum of the night. Close your eyes, let your breathing slow, matching the gentle rhythm of the waves crashing far below the cliffs. The scrolls are put away, the soul gems are dim, the world of Nirn is paused, waiting for you to return when you are ready. But for now, the adventure is over. Rest easy, traveller. The stars are watching over you. Sweet dreams.